All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another edition of Third Virtual Event, PodFest Asia, Asia's first ever monthly podcast festival. And I'm so excited because Mikel Ellcessor, who was on our first edition, I think we made our debut sometime in December 2020 during a really incredible year. And it was incredible for me personally because we are able to put together a festival, a virtual event, and we call that our first ever virtual event. And now we're doing the third edition. Welcome back, Mike. How have you been?
It's great to be back, and congratulations on the third event. Thank you for inviting me back. Was really happy. I think like a lot of folks to close 2020, and 2021's got its own special rhythm, but it's been a good year. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, I think we are so super psyched up because I think there's so much optimism, especially in the podcasting realm, right? So nobody better than having you coming onto this show and telling us about whether you are agreeing with the optimism that's been shown so far with so much activity, right? So many podcasters that are entering this space. At the same time, we have seen so much acquisition activities and a lot of crazy money being bandied around as well, right? So I think we just recently, witnessed what Spotify have done in terms of announcing some of their moves in this podcasting arena. So maybe tell us, what's on your mind these days. I know that the last time when you came on to this show, you were probably talking a lot about things that were on your mind during pandemic time. So 3 months later, what has changed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see things leveling out in new ways. The opportunity is as strong as ever for makers, for advertisers, for audiences who are looking for fresh voices and looking to form communities around really interesting content. So I think all of the opportunities are as good as they've ever been. And I was heartened to see a number of things put on the table in that big streaming event this week. One of them, which has been on my mind for more than a decade, which is the power of paid membership and getting the average person listening to a podcast to give whatever amount is really comfortable for them, $5 a month or $10 a month or $20 a month, to help make the work happen. I think it's a necessary evolution of the medium. I think it's a valid way to build relationships and to build communities around the content. And so I was happy to see a major company like that recognize how it's a necessary step. I think for the maturation, because we need that kind of revenue diversification. We really do, so that more makers can come into the space, create solid business models, and that the communities that love that can gather around and make it happen.
This is great. And I think the monetization part is definitely something we want to delve deeper into in the later part of this segment. And I was basically very, encouraged when Spotify also mentioned something about having this paywall, right? This ability to add a button that enables podcasters to actually monetize from their audience directly. So are you for or against this sort of move? And of course, are these always going to be the trend moving forward, where every podcaster have that means to monetize, not just having to masking tape apps together, like having a Patreon link connected to their show notes where they get incentivized for doing the things that they love to do?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a dual life as both, a partnership lead at Supercast, where we help podcasters to diversify their revenue through paid memberships. But I'm also an independent producer. I have shows that I'm developing, and I've been making things since we launched Radio Lab many, many years ago, and have worked with podcasters across the spectrum. So I want to see makers supported in as many ways as possible so that they can have nice, predictable business models, create really great communities around their work. To see a major platform embrace that and start to build that functionality into their system is a good thing. I lean toward platform agnosticism just around all things, not just things around podcasting. I want to make sure that the creators that are out there have the opportunity to monetize across platforms. And if one particular player, where maybe they reach 10% of their total audience, is helping them to monetize they're still leaving 90% of their listening out of the equation. So step forward, it's a good step, but it's certainly not a complete solution, because if you're not on that platform and if you're not using those tools, you kind of can't monetize that audience. And I mean, that's what we're really focused on.
Let's talk about monetization. I think that this is always the number one topic, especially ever since I started the festival. Yeah, I've been meeting like on average 5 podcasters a day, new podcasters that I've never known existed, but they have been hitting me up as well, and we've been doing a lot of coffee sessions, meetups. And the number one question, sometimes even before I sat down on the table, it will be, how do you monetize your podcast? So I'm always, very eager to share like how I actually make a living doing this. And of course, there are obviously so many different creative ways, right, to actually make a decent living doing podcasting. So can you provide us some strategies, some models, and the ones that have worked successfully for you and your clients as well?
Yeah. I mean, look, I often remind people that it starts with getting really clear about the value that you're placing on your own work, and then having the confidence to take that out to the world. So if you aren't really sure whether you're doing something that is distinct and adds something very meaningful to the life of your listener, you're going to find one way or another, you're going to be stumbling over some parts of monetization, because the ad sales environment, as everybody knows, is so heavily inclined towards large players. And if you're not a very, very significant player, it's a challenge. It's not impossible, but it's a challenge to rack up meaningful sort of like life supporting revenue. That's why the diversification is so important. Other people can go out and sell their shows to a platform or to a client, and another great opportunity to have done that myself. And then there's just plain work for hire, so you can be doing work for other people and have that help you to pay for your passion projects. And that's where sort of opening up the paid membership model, that whole stream, and seeing that come on in a big way, is just going to open up the opportunity for a lot of folks. But it starts on the inside, Wayne. Like, people have got to get clear before they can go out and make that eyeball to eyeball ask of their audience. They've got to be clear about what's the value that they're delivering to the world. And they've got to be confident about that, so that they can go out and have thought through and found a way to write the language and then deliver it in a confident way that says, we're making something together here. You're buying a paid membership to this not just gets you access to unique content that's behind the paywall, but it also helps this whole community to stay together and helps us to grow and to thrive. We've just cut an episode of our podcast, Supercasters, with Jack Reisider of Darknet Diaries. And this is just a guy that has built something absolutely from the ground up, super generous about sharing what he knows. And he's really clear with his audience that, we're, exploring the world of true crime on the internet. And he's a great storyteller, brings you stories you wouldn't find anywhere else. And he does a great job of painting the picture of why this is unique and special and worth your support. And I think that's what every podcaster needs to be able to figure out, is how to assign that value for themselves and then communicate it to the audience in such a compelling way that people will give.
I remember in the first episode or the first edition, when you came on, I think around midnight as well, you mentioned about the first question that's always on a podcaster's mind is to interrogate your own relationship with money.
Yeah.
So it's something that really left an impression, and it's more important than ever to be really clear about the craft of the ask, which has to cut through and also be totally specific, right? Do you have any tips or strategies for podcasters out there who are still trying to figure this thing out, in terms of asking sophisticatedly, so that they don't seem, they are not seen that they are really desperate for money, but at the same time, they also want to have a really good relationship in terms of interrogating their own relationship with money.
Yeah, I think take a partner is always a really good thing, and be willing to put yourself into an editing and mentorship relationship, so that you're doing your work in a solo way or maybe with a small team. But even in a small team, that groupthink can really click into click into gear, right? And so when you're going to go out and make your value proclamation to the world, go to people who are outside of the bubble, who are looking at it from a more independent, outside in kind of way, and test the language with them. Hey, does this make sense? What am I missing? Are there assumptions that are baked into this? Just put yourself into an editing process, so that you get out of your head and get out into the world, and ask for that kind of support. Take good partners and have the trust to have other people help you to get better. I all of my best work has always come after I've been edited.
Fantastic. And of course, you also touch on having an open-hearted approach is always best. So what about other forms of monetization? Have you ever tried out events? For example, events even like this format, right? To monetize even something like supercars, for example.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't pursued that. I mean, I've only been with the company since December the 8th, so I'm still very much a new guy. I've worked when I was back with WNYC Studios. We did quite a few events. And again, those lean toward fairly elite podcasters. But again, when it's safe for us to go back in a room and be in the same space with other people, then we'll be able to start considering this in a more specific way. But the time and the effort, the sunk costs, the invisible costs that go into making those events, when you really do the net on them, can be pretty hard unless you've got a whole monetization wraparound. You're doing the merch, you probably sold some sponsorship, you've got the ticket sales, maybe even you've negotiated a price of the bar, a piece of the bar. So if you have a really diverse revenue mix around a live event, it can be great. But my experience has been, that is a pretty top X% of podcasters that can do one and really derive true net revenue at the end of the day. Now, that said, there could be other great ways to do it. You're using it to create original content. You're using it to bond with your super fans. You're looking to try out new material, looking to do sort of, brand accentuation and really kind of clarify and amplify the brand. So there are non-cash reasons for doing it, but just be really honest with yourself and rigorous about what the true net return is a thing that I've just watched a lot of folks struggle with.
Yeah, and I've been watching what's happening, in terms of the social space, the social audio space. There's been so much activity where podcasters are now seeing more action in Clubhouse. Yeah, it seems to be an app that has taken some attention away from maybe the traditional way of broadcasting or podcasting. And even for someone like me, right, I've been moderating more rooms in Clubhouse recently. So in a way, it's also like an extension of doing events. And instead of doing an event like in this manner, where it's gonna be like with the camera on and of course sitting in front of a computer, just like doing a Zoom conference that goes on and on forever, right? Yeah. On Clubhouse, it seems to be easier to pull that kind of events off. Do you see that the future of podcasting being a marriage of Clubhouse as well as live podcasting, for example?
I mean, I don't know how or where the technologies will intersect or if they will. I mean, who knows about that? One of the things that's most interesting and exciting to me about Clubhouse is that it provides people who want to be hosts, who are interviewers, with a whole different kind of opportunity to sharpen their skills. I came out of daily live radio, where I was having people on the air a couple of times a week and had to do live interviews. And it's a whole different set of skills to sharpen, to be very, very present in the moment with the guest, and then simultaneously be thinking about how you springboard off of what they've just said to you, and then simultaneously be thinking 2 and 3 and 4 steps down the road, and then simultaneously looking for input that's coming in from the outside. It is a great set of skills to develop. It makes people fantastic interviewers, and the opportunity to be, live and dynamic and very present like that is just invaluable. And I think Clubhouse is a fantastic way to kind of get those skills sharpened up really quickly.
100%. And that really resonates for many podcasters, especially those who are looking to test their signal, right? Like this is an app that is a godsend because they can test a signal by not even having their episode or show cover artwork, figured out, and they could actually start to actually see more action and to sharpen their skills, like how you put it earlier. And the ability to do more Q&A where it's live and the audience become one of the participants in the content creation process as well. But of course, the recording part is something that they have to navigate. They probably have to masking tape some apps or equipment together and also ask for consent before they even record a show and make it replayable. But of course, that's for the live podcasting, maybe interview style realm. But the ones that you are really good at and we want to pick your brains about are the fiction podcasts and also the true crime podcasts and those shows that have the potential to be even a Netflix series in the future. Do you think that there's still not enough of fiction podcasts at this moment?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a push-pull with the market there, and how you look at it. I'm liking the expansion of fiction and sort of audio drama. Is there enough? I mean, I think it's hard to ask makers to produce something that is going to be just exponentially more expensive to do until we've been able to see where the market is, and who's coming in. And I think it keeps becoming these kinds of chicken and egg conversations, Wayne, like, well, why isn't there more? Well, there needs to be an audience for it. There needs to be a market for it. Well, but there hasn't been the content to attract those diverse audiences into the space. Well, so we have to make more content. It really becomes this kind of circular chicken and egg kind of thing. And so I think that there are people are trying to make smart bets on what to put into the space and do it in a way so they can actually try to make some money back. If the game is I'm going to make this and then I'm going to sell it in the derivative market. Great, go for that, or go to the horse track and do some betting there too. Because to me, it feels kind of like the same. I think you should make the work because you want to make the work, and you just can't stand to not do it. And then we'll see what happens. But anybody that's spent any time around Hollywood will tell you that it's just a total crapshoot, and that the idea that podcasting would somehow beat the odds of all of the screenwriters and producers and directors that have been out there, and that we're going to land a disproportionate number of slots in the production calendar every year, it seems unreasonable.
Very fair. And of course, having a strong fiction category means that a lot of effort has to be put in place, and of course investment of time, energy, and leveling up the game as well, right, to really have a chance to be even talked about or to be considered by all this OTT and all these big networks that are now delivering all this content across all this over the cable. And of course we are looking at more podcasters also experimenting in this realm. Do you think that podcasters are able to even see some action and test their signal if they are really interested in this fiction category, to even do maybe live reading on Clubhouse, for example, sharpen up their skills, make themselves feel that, maybe this is something that I want to explore further into, and it's just a natural progression from doing Q&A interview style podcasts?
I think they're really different skill sets. I think dramaturgy and talking head interview really are different kinds of things. I don't know that I would go to Terry Gross and say, let's have you do a theater production. They're just, they just happen to be, put in the same pipe, but they're really different skill sets. I've just spent a lot of time working with theater, working with not-for-profit groups, and looking at how do we bring more people into the arts. And I just have a lot of respect for the dramatic arts, and I think finding a way to take the dramatic arts and then refashion it into podcasting by stripping away all the visuals, etc. Stripping away that sense of shared experience that you have when you sit in a room and you watch Shakespeare with 150 other people and you're all sort of breathing at the same time. They're just not immediately transferable. I'm really optimistic about fictional works in audio and want to see a lot more of it. And I think people are going to be able to build some really great businesses around it. But the business models for it are still feel pretty far away. If you're not like an Audible, who can roll that in, that Sandman production that they did with James McAvoy, like you have to be able to roll that in with a lot of other expenses so that you can get that to level out and work.
And of course, there are many things that need to be in place to really have a stronger category of fiction podcasting. So my next question is about the organic growth for something that you started with in this space when you did Radio Lab, of course. So we're not going to maybe talk about the history of how you started and founded and grown it organically. Maybe we want to focus more about Supercast in terms of how you add value, how you actually help to lift others in terms of like podcasters who are finding, who are grinding out in this space and trying to level up, trying to monetize better, trying to have more resources and knowledge to really take their podcast shows to the next level. How does Supercast add value to these shows?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kevin Kelly, I believe, was right when he said, you have your true fans, and the true fans will stick with you through thick and thin if you stick with them, and if you give them an easy way to support, they're going to do it. And then if you provide them with something really compelling on the other side of that, then they'll do it even faster. Right. So with Supercast, what we've done is we've built a suite of tools that make it really easy for somebody to set up a private RSS feed. So it's folded right into the RSS player that they're already using. You'd see, show free and show premium set up side by side. It's a couple of swipes, and it's completely customizable. You as the podcaster can decide, the dollar amount that you want to set for the levels. You can decide what you want to put into those levels: ad-free, bonus episodes, unedited interviews. You can do experiences like AMAs. You can have sort of different interactive, pieces where you get in there with the AMAs and let people ask questions for the guests ahead of time. I mean, there's just so many ways you can be creative to say to the audience, like, look, we're a community here. We've gathered together because we want to go on a journey together, right? I'll keep making cool stuff. You keep listening it. And then if you give $5 a month, if you give $10 a month, you'll get access to this other stuff. And it helps to keep the show going. So there's a lot of, it's just built on reciprocity and community and shared, mutual interests. It's redundant. What we're seeing is that podcasters across all different sizes, across topic areas, are building really, really strong 5- and 6-figure revenue streams using this approach. And we just think that's going to democratize podcasting in a whole other way, because there are shows that are likely not going to be the blockbusters, but serve incredibly important roles to audiences of significant size, and that those communities are willing to be self-supporting. We've seen it with the published and the literary arts. We've seen it with the dramatic arts. We've seen it with independent cinema. There are just so many good examples of artistic communities and communities of shared need and interests that build up their own media. A lot of queer media, Black and sort of other ethnic slices have built their own really, really powerful, meaningful communities that are just meant for the people in those groups that are supporting themselves and that are really enriching people's lives. That can happen with podcasting too.
And I love it because you have so many diverse content creators on board. And of course, these are fantastic shows that people who consume podcasts, right, really love to have more channels to discover new content as well. And content creators love to have their content discovered on new platforms, new channels. So I think we only have about 5 more minutes to go. So I'm going to squeeze in a couple more questions before you go. I think it maybe relates to what you mentioned about interactivity. You mentioned about RSS feed as well. So everyone that I speak to in this podcasting realm agrees that the future of podcasting is still about RSS. But what Spotify has signaled in terms of their recent event, right? They're going to add more interactivity. They're going to have like so many things that they're experimenting right now that are exciting for podcasters. Like how you can even like interject music in between some talking segments, and the ability to even see animated maybe backgrounds when you're listening to a podcast or even watching a vodcast, for example. So that two element seems to be like moving away from the RSS foundation, right? Do you think that the future and how Spotify is actually making its moves in this format and in this arena, do you think it would change the game and change how podcast is been downloaded in the future?
Well, it's just not RSS. They're very explicit about the goal is when you're making a choice as a media consumer, you say, I want to listen. Like this is what I want to do. I want to listen in some way. I want companionship to another activity, or I want foreground listening, or I want to lift my mood or go to a particular place emotionally. When you want to listen, we want you to choose our app. And so we're going to keep experimenting and throwing things at you to make the whole experience as worthwhile as possible, because our business model is predicated upon time on app, right? So they've been 100%. I'm not saying anything smart or new or different. I mean, this is transparent and utterly clear. RSS is just different technology. It's not going onto a closed app. At Supercast, we're certainly excited about the ways that we're able to help RSS, to help do more with RSS, to help makers form community around their work. We think that there's still so much, like we've just scratched a single-digit percentage of the possibility there. And look, it's a technology with its limitations. It certainly has some privacy bottlenecks for some of the ad tech folks that want more information about the consumer so that they can do more with the advertising. But other folks are really happy with that level of sort of distance, that's there. Nothing's a perfect solution for anything. That's just like really obvious. Let's see the experimentation, bring it on. Let's see what the customers are really interested in. But along the way, we have to stay laser focused on getting more people from more different communities, having more opportunities to express themselves and to create healthy business models around it. There is no reason to continue here in the United States to continue to have this dialogue about how podcasting keeps coming from exclusively a very narrow base of our culture. We can expand this. It is a demand that we must expand it, and we can create business models so that more makers from more communities can make a really healthy living doing it and serving communities that are right-sized for them, but because they have that kind of reciprocal relationship, they can find themselves, they can find their voices, they can express the things that matter to them, they can advance their culture, they can lift up new artists, and they can do it in a self-sustaining way because we can create new business models for them.
Fantastic. I think you just sum it up for us in a very succinctly clear way. And I really appreciate you for agreeing to do this with me again, 2 times in 3 months. So it's incredible to have this relationship. And hopefully we can keep this going and do more monthly events where you can come back and give us more updates of what you're up to in Supercast. And it's great to have you here. Any last message for our audience before you go?
Oh, I'm just incredibly grateful for you convening this space, Wayne, and I will just evangelize the broadening out of podcasting all day long. And I just love that you bring in so many different folks who are slicing into podcasting from so many different angles and letting us find our own community here too. So just thanks a lot, man.
Echoing what one of the audience is saying, great insights, Mike. Thank you so much. I'll see you again. Please take care of yourself over there. And very soon I will do this all over again. All right.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike. See ya. And that's Mike. And he just kicked off our third virtual event. So I think so far, so good in terms of everything seems to be working well. I think the audio is going through clearly, right? So in the comment section, if anything is not like maybe 100%, please let us know. We're still trying to, warm up to this event. Of course, it's a 3-night, 2-day event. And coming up right next, we have Bryan Green, who is the creator and co-host of The Commercial Break. It's a comedy that, or should I say, a comedy chatcast that is created in early 2020 with his best friend, Chrissy Hoadley. So I'm so super excited to have Bryan Green coming on and making his debut in PodFest Asia. And to give you a further intro before we bring him on stage, he's also the co-founder of the Weekend podcast. So we're going to have him share more insights and tell us more about what he do. So without further ado, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Wayne, how are you? I'm gonna second Mike there. Great insights from Mike, and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you for agreeing to do this. So Bryan, give us just 1 minute, maybe elevator pitch about what you do, and tell our audience in Asia. We have never really, come across your show in a big way yet. So this is probably the first time we are finding out about your incredible show. Tell us what your show is all about.
Sure. Well, it's almost about nothing, Wayne. So that's the great news about Comedy Chatcast, is it can go anywhere and be anything.
It's like Seinfeld.
Yeah, kind of like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing, and we like it that way. So in 2020, I decided I was going to get into podcasting. I had some experience in radio and streamcasting back in the day, and a good friend of mine, Allison, decided to kick my butt and get me onto podcasting, and I grabbed my friend Chrissy Hoadley. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I had some ideas, they were more serious, and I decided that I was probably better just cutting up. It would keep me interested for a longer period of time. And I asked Chrissy, my co-host, to be my guest on the first couple of episodes. And after 2 or 3 episodes, it became clear that our friendship was coming through on over the microphone. And so she decided to stick around. And then it's just been a wild ride for the last 9 months. I mean, we've #1 global trending podcast in the world, all kind of charts, a couple 100,000 listeners. I mean, it's really been an amazing experience so far, and changed our life in so many ways. And the podcast community has welcomed us with just a warm embrace. And I think the podcast community in general welcomes everybody with a warm embrace. But yeah, we're so happy that we decided to do it, and lots of success. We don't have a huge audience in Asia yet, but I hope that will change starting here with you, Wayne. And you're doing such a great job expanding that audience to the eastern part of the world. So thank you.
Thank you for the lovely comments. And of course, you are inspiring us back, to do this more often and more regularly, and maybe have more post-festival conversations as well, so that we can put a spotlight on great shows like yours from around the world. So great content is always a way for us to inspire us podcasters in Asia to actually pick up, the best tips, the best content that inspired us to create something of our own in Asia. So I know that you have also many things that you can share with us, not just your great podcast. You have applied so much great knowledge of analytics and marketing to grow your podcast. So that's something that podcasters in Asia can learn from you a lot from. So maybe can you tell us in the next 5 minutes how you actually apply these knowledge so that they appear in the top 1% in terms of all podcasts that I heard are downloaded globally, right? And also appearing on top podcast charts worldwide. So how did you actually crush it?
So I had a background in internet marketing. When Google came online, I started with a company that's now very large, but at the time was very small, like a lot of those companies were, kind of feeding off of the search engine optimization model that Google had put together. And so analytics was a big part of that job. You had to really understand how to read this new analytics platform that Google had put out. And I became Google Analytics certified at that point. So I started to really understand what analytics were, how to use them to measure success or not success of certain marketing campaigns is really what my job was, and to use those numbers to kind of balance out what the strategies were moving forward. So now I just take that and I apply that with my podcast. So I think first and foremost, if we're going to give some kind of tips to new podcasters or podcasters that are out there and may not understand how analytics play a part in their growth, there's a common misconception, I think, that there is a download number that equals success. I see a lot of download envy that happens, especially with new podcasters, but I've heard it from experienced podcasters too, that they're looking for that magic number of downloads that equals, Joe Rogan contract, right, Wayne? So they're saying to themselves, what number do I need to get at to monetize my podcast, to be a success, to get on the charts, to feel good about the content that I'm putting out there? And the reality is, and this is coming from a super honest place, no one knows what the magic download number is, because your audience, if you're and I use this example a lot, and so people who have heard me say it probably are sick of me saying it, but I'll use it with you here for the audience over there. If you have a podcast about zookeepers, there may only be 1,000 zookeepers in the United States total. And so if you get 500 of those zookeepers to listen to you, isn't that a rousing success? Where I have a comedy chat cast, and for me, most everybody likes to laugh. I would imagine that's true. Now, maybe not everybody likes my brand of comedy, but for me, my audience might be much more broad. It might be much larger, and that might be success to me just because my audience is potentially much larger. So I think a lot of podcasters make the mistake when they get in the game of saying, oh, I only have 100 downloads, and so I'm not really doing all that well. Well, depending on who your audience is and what your target is, you might be doing extremely well. First of all. Second of all, download numbers are really only important if you're selling advertising, you're stroking your ego, or you want to have your graphs and charts look very nice. I think the more important measure of success as far as analytics are concerned are consumption rates, the listen through rates. How long is someone staying around to listen to your content? If that number is 20%, you're probably not on the right content track. If it's 90%, you probably very much are on the right content track. And so for me, I'll give you an example. We started, and our first couple of episodes were like an hour plus, an hour 15, an hour 10, an hour 12. What I found was people were dropping off after about 40 minutes. A large part of the audience was dropping off about 40 minutes. Now, I can either say that last half of the show wasn't funny, or that people just didn't have the time to consume an hour and 15 minutes of a comedy chat cast. And so I shortened it up about episode number 10, and the consumption rates went 90% plus. So I did something right there, and I'm serving my audience the way they want to be served. And so I think that is an important number you look at. You look at unique listeners. How many unique human beings are coming and listening to your show? Is that growing week after week? Is that growing month after month? If that is true, then you're doing the right thing also. And I would encourage people who are listening to me speak about analytics that you take a period of time and look for patterns, not a small chunk of time and look for patterns, because podcasting is a slow, low ground game for most of us. If I'm not Will Ferrell and walking in the door with 60 million people who already know my name, I'm going to have to grow an audience over a period of time. So looking day to day at my analytics and getting bummed out because yesterday I had 500 downloads and today I have 480 is not a wise move. It's not a great use of our time. So there's a couple things. Look at unique listeners. Look at your listen through rates. Are you serving your audience? Is the content hitting? And then most importantly, don't obsess over the numbers. Look over a period of time. Don't look day to day or hour to hour. I think that can probably bum anybody out, I would imagine. So analytics have played a huge part in our growth because I pay attention to what the audience is telling me through those analytics. And I mean, we could go on and on forever about this, but I think those are just a kind of the top line tips that I can give a new podcaster or experienced podcaster on how to use their analytics to grow.
Great tips. I think the analytics part, you dropped so much wisdom right there about don't obsess on the wrong kind of numbers, right? Ignore the charts. Because I think podcasters, we love podcasting because we want to escape math. So it's like if we obsess over downloads and we feel like shit just because, it doesn't measure up to somebody else's numbers, then we've kind of like forgotten why we got into this space or this trade in the first place, right? And those who obsess, to be really honest, even in Singapore, when I'm meeting up podcasters in Singapore, I'm meeting up like average of 5 new podcasts a day. And
Wow.
a lot of times they're always feeling like they suck or they are not good enough. There's this imposter syndrome just because they are measuring themselves with the likes of Tim Ferriss and the Joe Rogans of this world. And they never understand or realize that they don't suck. It's just that they are early in the process, right? Joe Rogan been doing this for 10 years. So why do you want to compare yourself with the rock stars of this world? And it's something that what you said really resonate and really you drill across this point of look at the right numbers, but don't look at charts, and positions.
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, I mean, it's really neat to a new podcaster to be on the charts. I admit to myself when I first got on the charts, when you see yourself on Apple or Chartable or Spotify, you're really excited about that. And congratulations, you should pat yourself on the back. You're doing something right, obviously. But the new, I was talking to a new, we're doing a lot of clubhouses. I know that because we've been in a few rooms together. We're doing a lot of clubhouses around new podcasters and new podcasting. And I hear a lot. We did a clubhouse room called "What Do You Do When Your Numbers Suck?" Right, and it was kind of a clickbaity title, but it drove a lot of interest. And people would come up and they'd be like, "I'm on episode number 5 and I only have 100 downloads, and I don't know if I should continue." And I'm like, 100 downloads at episode number 5. I think 90% of new podcasters would love to have 100 episodes, 100 downloads at episode number 5. Number one. Number two, you're a baby. You haven't even begun to crawl yet. Don't stop before you get to walk. And I think you're right. These new podcasters obsess about new numbers. Let me give you a little anecdotal information that I heard. The COO of Simplecast, and I can't remember her name right now, but she was interviewed by a good friend of mine, Allison Hare, on her podcast. And the COO said, one of the trends that we see that is extraordinarily interesting to us is that when new podcasters launch their podcast, they will check their analytics every 5 minutes. They will be on our platform day in, day out, night after night. They will just be obsessing over it. The more experienced podcasters might check it once a week or once a month. And so I think that there's an important lesson to be learned there, and that is that the people who have been in the game for a long time understand that looking for trends are super important, but obsessing over numbers is going to it's almost like shooting yourself in the foot before you even start to walk. You need to give yourself some breathing room and allow yourself the opportunities to succeed before you decide you've failed. So I agree with you 100%, Wayne, is these new podcasters, and listen, I'm guilty of it. So I'm not, calling the kettle black. I'm teaching from experience that look for patterns over a period of time. Don't obsess day over day, because if your content is good and you're doing the right things to grow your audience, then you're going to find that audience. It's going to happen. It just might take some time. It might not ever be Joe Rogan's show, but you might have 100,000 really engaged listeners. And that's a success, a huge success. And you should really strive for that.
100%. I really love that. And I think you mentioned about that guilty part, right? Even I'm guilty of that sometimes as well. And I'm just sharing an experience. I was in a clubhouse room last night, I think 2 nights ago. And basically, it's a bunch of podcast all-stars who came on stage one after another to introduce themselves and basically to pitch about their shows, right? Everyone started off their pitch with, my show has 10,000 downloads per episode. My show has 50,000 downloads. And everyone was like, is that the reason why you want to do podcasting? Is that why? Because that math is so important now that your introduction has to be about numbers. And that kind of like screws my mind up a little bit. I just can't get around the fact that that becomes like the selling point of you or your show. And tell me, how many times are you guilty of even doing something like that when you introduce your podcast? And how many times do you check analytics for the commercial break?
Since I'm an analytics guy, I'm telling everybody not to check their analytics, but the truth is I do it quite a bit. I mean, at least once or twice a day, I'm checking the analytics and looking for patterns. We also do a lot of organic, non-paid and paid advertising. I think any podcaster is smart if they can to use both of those bullets in the barrel, so to speak, to grow their audience. So for me, looking at analytics is not just to see if my numbers are growing. I've become less and less interested in that. It's to see if the marketing campaigns are working, to see if the organic strategies that we're putting in play are they hitting or are they missing? So for me, it's all about testing and measuring these marketing strategies that we have. And so I look there more for signs like kind of a roadmap to where we're going and how we're going to succeed and where our audience is. I'll give you an interesting anecdote here, Wayne. So when we first started seeing real growth in the podcast, probably about 20 episodes in, we were very excited about that. We never expected that kind of growth. I'm actually not guilty of introducing myself with numbers because I feel like it's just not. First of all, my mom told me to be humble. Second of all, I just don't think that it's a great conversation starter with other podcasts because I never know who's got what numbers and how they feel about those. When we first started seeing real growth, we hadn't yet really seen engagement. People texting us, calling us, emailing us, hitting us up on Instagram. And we didn't really press those things at first. But about 20 or 25 episodes in, I got a message from someone that I didn't know. And they said, Bryan, I was really having a miserable day. These series of events happened to me over the last week. I was feeling really down, the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. And I was really in kind of a deep, dark place. And I found your podcast and I'm on episode number, 4 of listening today. And it's taken me away from all of those worries for just a minute. And I'm laughing out loud. And Wayne, I think at that moment, right then, I realized that the numbers in the analytics didn't mean anything. But engaging with this particular young lady and changing her day meant everything to me. And I think that should be the measure of success at first. If you're not selling advertising and you're not monetizing to a great deal, you're not making a living off podcasting, you should look for other signs that you are making an impact, that your content is hitting. And that for me was the moment when I was like, okay, I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm never going to make $150 million a year with Spotify. But that connection with that person I didn't know made my day. Really, quite frankly, to this day, I still think about it as a measure of success for our podcast.
This is fantastic. I think look out for other wins, right? And
yeah,
like even this festival that I put up, I don't care like how many people watch the replays or download the replay episodes on Spotify or Apple. All I care is how many people actually DM me and say that, I caught that segment when Bryan and you were riffing about don't focus and be obsessed with numbers and just focus on the art of and the the joy of creation, right? Yeah. And that segment inspired me to start a podcast. That is the one that makes my day more than any single number digit out there that can be ups and down as well, right? You might be on top, maybe number 1 at charts, but the next moment you could be number 100. So does it mean that you stop creating just because the numbers don't add up? The answer is no, not. Right? So yeah, we need to constantly look out for the correct win. So I think you just reinforce that point across really well. We can't let you go without talking about Weekend Podcasts because I know that you're also the co-founder of that. Yeah. So I know that it's a 3-podcast intensive workshop program, right? Yeah. Where clients walk in with an idea and then they can live with a published podcast. How did you pull off something like that? It's incredible.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of the backstory and then I'll tell you about the intensive. So the reason why my podcast is even on the air is because my good friend Allison Hare, who I had been in radio with, we worked at Clear Channel. We weren't on air. We were just we were executives at the company. Allison had started a podcast a couple of years ago, and she really found that she enjoyed helping other people who were interested in podcasting get their podcast off the ground. So she put together a 6-week program called Press Play Podcasts, where she would give you the technical information. She would give you an assignment, go out and record yourself for 5 minutes, practice an interview with a friend, go get your microphone, do all this other technical stuff. And she would put little videos together that you would watch over the course of the week. And then on Thursday nights, we would get together for an hour, this small group of people, 6 or 7, and we would brainstorm about each other's podcasts and our ideas. What ended up happening, so I was part of that first class, the first course. What ended up happening was those calls would go a lot longer than an hour. And it's where the magic happened because it was the intense focus on helping each other. And, sometimes we can't see the forest through the trees. We get stuck on something. We get stuck on, I don't have the right name. I don't have the right song. I don't have the right intro. My trailer sucks. And it takes an outside point of view to go, hey, listen, don't fear failing because of a trailer. Fear never doing it at all. That's really what why we're all here. You need to get out there. And so we were kind of kicking each other's butts to get motivated and do it. And out of that class, of the 6 people that were there, 3 of us went on to actually start a podcast. And all 3 of us have had what I would consider some measure of engaged success. So Allison and I then kind of reconnected over the year of this pandemic, and we have been helping podcasters ever since in a consultative fashion, sometimes paid, sometimes not paid. We do these Clubhouse rooms all the time in Club Pod and otherwise. We got together and she said, would you help me do Press Play podcast? I've been a part of a number of courses since. And we met with a strategist, and we decided that really what was important was not what microphone you were using. What was important out of that class was the intense focus and those conversations that happened with other like-minded people, and the ability to have someone else look at your idea and help you marinate it, so to speak. And so we said, if we could take that 6 weeks and boil it down to 3 days, we can help them do the technical part. We can teach you how to edit in Audacity in 2 hours. It's not that hard. We can help you find a song. We can make your podcast cover overnight. Those parts aren't difficult. What's difficult is getting the courage and the motivation and the ideas that you can actually say, hey, I have the first 5 episode content ideas right here. I have my first interview in the can. If we can do that over the course of 3 days, then there's no reason why you shouldn't have a podcast published by the end of 3 days. I think a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines because they get stuck on the silliness. They get stuck on an idea. I can't tell you, Wayne, how many people I've heard in Clubhouse. I have a great idea for a podcast. I already have 20 episodes, scripted out, but I just haven't found the right name. You haven't found the right name. Call it Name Podcast. It doesn't matter what the name is. Just get it out there. If you want to share your voice, share it. You can change the name later. It doesn't matter. What matters, I often say this, and I think you'll agree with me, Wayne, all a good podcaster needs to know how to do is create great content. You can pay somebody else to do the rest. You think Joe Rogan's sitting around editing his own podcast? No. He walks into the studio, creates great content, he heads out the door. So I think a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines, not using their voice in this manner, because they're afraid of some technicality, or maybe they're just afraid in general of hearing themselves on the microphone or pressing publish. And so what we do is we get them in a room for 3 days. We take care of all of the minutia, and we allow them to just focus on creating great content. And then they have a published podcast at the end. And then we then help them along the way for the next couple of months to make sure that they get past that magic number 7 when people drop off. So it's a great idea. We have actually one of them coming up this weekend, and I just get very excited about talking shop and helping other podcasts. It's a true passion of mine.
I love it because it simplifies this process, and even naming it Weekend Podcaster makes it less heavy, and there's no burden of having to do this 24/7. I think that scares people, right? And most of the people that I talk to, they have a problem with starting and finishing. So like what you mentioned right there about call your podcast Name. If you can't come up with a name, right? That's something that is so easily understood, but it's something that actually many are facing this problem. Like they could be changing their podcast name 10 times and they still haven't pressed record. Yeah. And they still haven't uploaded an episode. They still haven't put out content. So it's the only way to learn and to get really good at this is to start. So there's this saying about dream big, start small, but most importantly, just start, right? So I think you're one of those incredible people that are actually helping to make people more convinced and more confident that this process can start anytime, and you don't really have to overthink the process, and maybe leave it to you guys to help them to do this hand holding a role that you and your partner are doing at the Weekend Podcaster. Yeah, it's a wonderful. There is some magic that happens when like-minded, good-natured human beings get in a room and focus on something. Magic happens. I mean, that's how Apple started. It's how Microsoft started. I mean, every great idea started with, usually a couple people in a room focusing on that idea, and no one does anything alone. I mean, that's just the reality. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to make a podcast. That's just how it is. I mean, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you need to know other podcasters. I truly, truly believe that. And this community is so warm and welcoming, and it's a huge open field. We're only
the tip of the iceberg right now as far as podcasting is concerned. I meet some people who say, well, there's so many podcasts out there already. Truth is, no, there's not. It's, it's quite small right now compared to other media forms. And I can only see the growth continuing, even with the likes of Clubhouse and all these other kind of things that are popping up. I think that it's a green field entertainment module.
100%. So before we let you go, can you maybe recommend some episodes or highlights from your podcast, The Commercial Break? Maybe recommend those episodes that will leave the audience in Asia asking, why am I listening to this podcast again?
Yeah, I think last week's episode was pretty funny. So if you go back and listen to episode number 45 and 46, the one that just came out yesterday, I think that's a good representation of what the commercial break is. There's also one called COVID Christmas Castle, which I think is episode number 36, which is back during Christmas time. So 45, 46, and 36, I think that'll give you a good idea of what the commercial break is. And listen, we're irreverent, we're funny, it's all in good fun. It really comes from a place of love. We're just two people trying to crack each other up, and we get to tick a lot of people who enjoy it. And I really appreciate you, Wayne, putting this together. I think you're doing a great service, expanding this out into a new marketplace. And I really appreciate you having me here today. And I can only hope this is the first of many.
And I really appreciate you agreeing to do this. With just one DM, and then we are, voila, on in front of my screen, and telling us all the great things you're doing over there, and telling us episode 46, 47, and 36, right?
Episode 45, 46, and 36.
Got it. For a show about nothing, I'm going to check it out, and I know I'm going to enjoy as much as I enjoyed the entire Seinfeld series. So I love it when the podcasters don't overhype their shows, and it shows that confidence as well, that you got to actually listen it, experience it for yourself before you decide whether it's for you or not for you, right? So I'm going to dive in those 3 episodes immediately after this festival is wrapped up. So thank you once again, my friend, and I hope to have you back on next time. Maybe we'll do a post-festival event live on Clubhouse together. Let's do a room where you to put a spotlight on your show and bring in some of the Asian podcast community to you riff about your show and what you do at the Weekend Podcaster, yeah?
Well, I invite you to come to our clubhouse on our Club Pod Clubhouse on Monday night. We can do whenever you're ready, we can do a post PodFest Asia, and we'll bring some audience along for you, Wayne.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. I can't wait. So thank you once again, Bryan. I'll see you around very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you. That's Bryan Green, the co-host of the Commercial Break. So do check out the 3 episodes that he just mentioned. I think those are the 3. You could probably have a feel of whether this show really leaves you asking, why am I listening to this podcast again? I really love the concept and his tagline. And approaching 1 a.m. in Singapore, we are 1 hour through this day 1 midnight session for PodFest Asia. I have coming right up Charlene Dinger, someone who is also one of the podcasters that are doing great things in this realm. And her show is called the Compassionate Creative Podcast. So we can't wait to have her, talk to us about her show and maybe answer some questions that we have, like what inspired her to share stories. So without further ado, Charlene, are you able to see me right now?
Hi, Wayne. Yep, I can see you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Welcome to the show. Welcome to our festival. And say hello to our Asian audience for the first time ever.
Hello, everybody. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today, Wayne. I'm so happy and grateful that you invited me on. This is such an amazing event that you're putting on, an amazing platform that you're providing for podcasters all over the world. So I thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Thank you. And I have to reciprocate by giving you a proper introduction. So Charlene Dinger, you're a dancer, choreographer, educator, mentor, and also host of the Compassionate Creative Podcast, right? So you wear so many hats, but we're going to maybe just start off with a podcast, of course. Tell us what inspired you to share stories of creative leaders who work to pave a path forward in their industries and do so with compassion, authenticity, and integrity. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that wonderful, exciting intro. I appreciate it. Yeah. So as you said, I come from a dance background. I grew up as a competitive elite dancer and traveled to Europe to actually pursue my career in London. And I basically just wanted to start this podcast to use it as a platform to share voices of fellow creatives. You know, I am so inspired by my fellow dancers, my fellow choreographers, anyone really that is in any sort of creative realm. And I think it was sort of the catalyst for it was realizing through these COVID times, these wonderful, exciting, scary times that we're all in together. I was really, really realizing how much creatives were keeping the world entertained, you know, through direction, through television, acting, you know, singing, so many artists sharing their gifts and sharing their talents and keeping the world entertained during these times of isolation, being home a little bit more, you know, and I just wanted to share those stories. I just feel that artists deserve to have their voices shared. There's so many things that we as creatives go through and experience, so many trials, so many tribulations, challenges that come up for us. And I really wanted to put a focus on creatives that are putting their work out there and doing so from a true place of compassion, a place of authenticity. You know, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what it is that you're putting out into the world, I truly believe that you can do it from a place of compassion, having empathy towards others, you know, putting kindness out into the world. And yeah, that was the inspiration behind starting the podcast and just wanting to share those voices.
I love those three key words, you know, compassion, authenticity, and integrity. And of course, I also absolutely love your mission and your purpose behind the Compassionate Creative Podcast. So was the idea behind this you're doing or somebody else's idea, or was it a suggestion by a friend or one of a potential listener that they asked you to do a show like this?
Yeah, well, you know, it was a few friends that actually kind of started to sort of plant the seed, I suppose. Just in talking and in conversation, I had a few people say to me, you know, feel like you would be really good at podcasting. This is something that I think I could see you doing, and it was something that I always sort of had played around with in my mind, but I think I always sort of had the excuse of I don't really have the time, or, you know, who am I? Who am I to share my voice? Who is going to actually listen to this? You know, that imposter syndrome kind of coming into the background. So yeah, it was definitely a few people sort of encouraging, and I played around with a few different names. I sort of knew what the mission was going to be. Like, I definitely wanted to share these voices of creatives, of artists. And I sort of just kept playing around, and the word compassionate kept coming up for me. It was something that was really resonating with me. And I was like, okay, this is something that I feel like I can kind of play with, and just toyed with a few different names and landed on the Compassionate Creative. And it's really lovely to hear so many people say to me, I love the name of your podcast. You know, I think it really shows sort of what to expect in each episode, what to expect from certain guests. And it leaves it open enough to sort of invite many different people, whether you're in a creative industry or not. I truly believe, and this is something that I've discussed with many of my guests before as well, that we all have creativity inside of us. We all have the capacity to create, and we all have the capacity to be compassionate. So I do think that whatever industry you so happen to be in, it is still a podcast that could resonate with you and that you could connect to.
And of course, doing this podcast provide you so much joy as well, right? Of course, in your show, you have to ask your guests some questions about like their struggles and challenges as well. But of course, you know, there's a lot of value that you provide. Like you share, through asking your guests what tools and skills they use to enhance creativity, and how creative state inspires well to continue to work from a place of compassion. So what are some of the biggest wins from using this podcast as a platform to share the stories and also amplify the voices of your fellow creatives who are putting good things out into this world?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that way. And I feel like it's a really important message in my podcast. So I always start with the same question, and anyone that has sort of listened to a few episodes, and hopefully, more listeners will be popping in after this. But I always start with the question, how have you shown yourself compassion today? And I love to start with that question because it's something that I am working on myself each and every day, showing myself compassion, making the time, carving out the space to connect to myself, so that when I do have to step out into the world, I'm trying to step into a space of like my most authentic voice. I'm trying to be, the best person that I can be each and every day. And so I always start with that question, how have you shown yourself compassion today, to all of my guests, to, sort of ask them to reflect on how have you connected to yourself. I think that it's really important to ask ourselves that, and it's really important to practice that, to practice connecting to yourself so that you can connect to others in the most authentic way possible, and you can connect to others with your true voice. Some of the biggest, oh man, I've learned so many lessons. So many lessons. I've had so many wonderful guests on the show, and a lot of great advice. I've talked a few times about this idea of flow and getting into creative flow, things that you can do to enhance your flow. And a lot of it comes back to that connection to yourself, giving yourself space, giving yourself enough time to rest so that you don't burn out. And I know that this is something that podcasters experience on a lot of different levels, is that burnout, right? Trying to just push and hustle, get those episodes out. And so there's been some really interesting conversations about flow, about burnout, about how to prevent burnout. Some other lessons that I have learned, just really about being gentle on yourself, being kind to yourself, being able to give yourself enough space and to not be so hard on yourself, when you come up against those challenges, to just try and sort of accept them and look at them and try and take them on with as much grace and ease as possible without being too hard on yourself. As human beings, I think we're really hard on ourselves. And when we come up against our struggles and our challenges, we try to really just push through it and just get through it, But I think just being gentle on yourself is really important in those moments. Yeah. Oh man. I'm trying to think of all the many lessons that I've had, but those are some of them. I think just once again, the biggest thing probably that has been consistent throughout all of my guests is that idea of taking some time for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes in the morning, whether it's 2 minutes on your lunch break, whatever time you have to be able to set aside for yourself to have a cup of tea, take a few deep breaths, whether it's a meditation practice that you might have, or you go for a mindful walk. Taking that time to connect to yourself, I think can just open up so much for the rest of your life.
100%. I think even like taking a nap, right, is something that podcasters forget to do sometimes. Yes. I'm guilty of that. I think I remember, I didn't want to work in the 9-to-5 job. So I took up podcasting full time because of that decision. And I found myself working 24/7. So it's like, wow, now I'm working more than ever before, but I'm really enjoying this. And I really love doing what I do. So, and there's a byproduct. There's also like, I'm absolutely wrong and right at the same time about making a statement like that. Because if you love something that you do so much, right, you kind of forget there are also other important things in life. For example, sleeping. Some people can actually make
Yeah.
do without sleep, right? Or even take a nap, taking a break, or just
Yeah.
optimize chill and maybe just watch a Netflix show. I think these are the things that we just switch on. But even when we're watching a Netflix show, sometimes we can't switch off. We're like
Yes.
learning how that particular character plays out his character, or learning to say certain things the right way so they can improve our content creation process as well. Does it happen to you? And as a creative, right? As a fellow creative, and also having so many creatives on your show, what are some of the most inspirational things that they have ever mentioned to you?
Yeah, there's, and I think just before I get into that, Wayne, what you just said too about, even if it's like sitting on the couch watching a Netflix show, I think also doing that and not feeling guilty for it, not sort of like being hard on yourself or like, oh, I should be doing something right now. I should be productive right now, because what we tend to forget is that rest is still productive. Rest is still something that, we all need, and that we need to regenerate so that we can be our best selves, when we move forward. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for that reminder. Oh my goodness. Some of the most inspirational guests, one of my first guests, his name is Hollywood Jade. He's a good friend. We had multiple different connections, and he actually, my husband is also a dancer, and he dances in a jazz company with my husband. So, we have, I don't know, is RuPaul's Drag Race in Asia?
Yeah, there's an Asian edition as well. I think the
Okay.
here before, yeah.
I'm not surprised by that. So Canada, I'm in Toronto, Ontario. So in Canada, we got our own version, Canada's Drag Race, and Hollywood is the resident choreographer. And I wanted to interview him because this was such a huge step in his career, and it's something that was really, really special, really important. And I just asked him like what that experience was like for him, and also how he was able to remain authentic to himself and true to his voice, because in television, there's a whole other world, right? You're sort of especially with reality television, there's this expectation of like a character, and what I was asking him was like, how did you not really get caught up in that characterization or like that dramatization of who you are, and how did you remain true and authentic to yourself? And he shared a story about how through one of the rehearsal processes, one of the drag queens that he was rehearsing with had sort of, kind of given up or like, rolled her eyes and just wasn't really very present within the rehearsal process. And he really took that on personally. Like he really thought that it had something to do with him and who he was, or he wasn't putting in the work to kind of make this rehearsal come together. And he said it wasn't until after that he actually had a discussion with this queen, and they were able to just talk it out. They were able to just kind of connect on a level that was off camera, that didn't have anything to do with the show. And, he said, we really were able to connect. And I just thought like, okay, fine, I'm not going to have anything to do with that person, or I'll just kind of brush it off. And I think what I really learned from that was it's really just about human connection and creating those connections, being able to sort of speak to one another, even if there is friction, even if there is, other things coming up for us. We don't know what other people are experiencing in their days. We don't know how other people are feeling. We might be seeing a really happy, positive person, but on the inside, that person might be suffering, or, they might be going through something that you just don't know about. And so I think that just being able to speak to each other, have a lot of empathy for each other, being able to kind of have those conversations, true conversations, authentic conversations, where once again, you're showing up as your most authentic self, and you're able to embrace many different people, hold empathy for many different people. And I just think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that has landed with me so far.
And I think that's a lesson that I learned as well when I listen to your episodes, because you're striving to create such a safe space for your guests to feel free to also open up and also share their authenticity and their vulnerability. So you're kind of like reminding listeners like me, right, and those other listeners in Asia as well, who's discovering your show maybe for the first time in this festival, that no matter what path that we walk in our lives, we are not alone, and we all share such similar experiences as well. So
Yes.
do you have any maybe stories of your own where you can maybe share with us what are some of the like the dark times that you have to walk, you know, and don't feel that you're alone because you are able to open up and actually embrace as well yourself, and of course to reconnect the world by first checking in with yourself first. So do you have any stories like that where you're able to walk out of those darkness and see light at the end?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So as you know, I come from a dance background, a movement background. I teach yoga. And so I really am in a place too, where I also have to show up and hold space and create safe spaces for my young dancers, for my yoga students. And so it's something that I'm always sort of working on. And it's so funny that you should ask this, because I literally, before we got on, just recorded a solo episode that I'll be releasing on Friday about self-love, about self-compassion, and how it's really hard sometimes. It's really, really hard sometimes to hold that space for yourself. So a story about me is that a few years ago, I was diagnosed with a nephrotic kidney disease, and it's something that sort of just happens. It's, they don't really know if it's like hereditary, if it's something, that you can control with like diet or anything like that. It's not really anything like that. And the first diagnosis, I've sort of relapsed a few times, and I'm currently in the process of a new treatment plan, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling healthy. But it was really, really hard in the beginning to accept it. Especially I'm healthy. I work out. I do yoga. I move my body every single day. I nourish myself with healthy foods and lots of water. On the outside, I sort of am like this, this epitome of like a healthy person. I don't drink. I don't smoke. And it was really, really frustrating. And it was really hard to accept and really hard to sort of come to terms with it. But I think once I sort of started that process of, okay, instead of being disappointed, or instead of being hard on myself because it's something that I can't control, I started to sort of turn that around and begin to just send myself and send my body, send my kidneys so much love. And, it is a process. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. I have a regular daily meditation practice, like I mentioned before, and it's something that has really, really helped me through those times of frustration, those times of, feeling the heaviness, feeling the weight, feeling the darkness a little bit more. Having that meditation practice sort of helps me to just reground and regroup and be able to sort of step away and step back and say, you know what, you got this. It's okay. You don't have any control over, your health situation. And all you can do is just continue to nourish yourself and continue to send yourself some love. And so, yeah, just self-love, self-compassion in those times is truly what I'm personally working on. And the podcast has been such a great outlet for that. It really gives me a chance to express myself. It gives me a chance to connect with other people and listen to their stories and, be inspired by them, be inspired by people such as yourself, Wayne, just having those connections and knowing, like you said, that I'm not alone. We're not alone in this. We have each other. And, I once again, I know I keep saying this, but I think that by creating those genuine and authentic connections with other people, and that's truly the power of podcasting, right? Being able to connect with other people, having that platform where I can share my own voice, share other voices that inspire me, hopefully that feels like I'm connecting to my listeners too.
This is great. And of course, you just reinforced that point about why podcasting is great, not just as a way for some people, they are doing it because it's a way they make a living. For us, of us, it's a way for us to reach out, connect with the universe, right? Hence, this particular background that I use is basically allowing podcasters from around the world to come on to this festival, and we get connected to one another. So like I mentioned earlier, you're energizing and reinvigorating me back as well, because you come on to this festival and tell us about all the great wisdom and experience of doing podcasting and some of the great content in your show. It's we are kind of borrowing your wisdom as well, like how to actually, feel that it's totally okay to be vulnerable, totally okay to actually, take a break sometimes when you need it, because those are productive things as well, and not to be too hard on ourselves, right? So and thank you for actually mentioning that about what this festival and how we actually are able to use this platform to connect with you as well. So just reciprocating that back to you, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's people like you, Wayne, that we need out in the world, connecting people. You're a connector, you're making this, you've created this platform for so many people to enjoy and to come onto. Even just when I was backstage before coming online with you, listening to Bryan speak, I was like, okay, I need to go listen to his podcast now too. It's so inspiring. There's so many wonderful, amazing people out there that, it's really just about making those connections. And once again, just understanding that we're so similar. I think we're a lot more similar than we think we are. And we just need to realize that and know that we're not alone in our journeys.
That's a beautiful point, because I think you mentioned about checking out other people's podcasts. That's what podcasters do, right? Sometimes we ran out of things to say or people to interview. So to find inspiration, we find it by listening to other people's podcasts. So one of the things that we wanted to do is to put the spotlight on great shows like yours, so that we can check out all your great episodes as well. One of the most recent highlights or episodes that you think that will resonate very well with our Asian audiences, especially people in this part of the world, and podcasters as well, who would love to check out your show?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I say I'm sort of a baby in this podcasting world. Last Friday, I just released episode 14. So, I'm still relatively new, but I think I'm kind of getting into the swing of it. And I know for me anyways, I've had some really amazing guests. That particular episode 14, I called it Using Creativity to Be of Service. And it was my guest was her name is Parisa Samet, and she was one of my yoga teachers in one of my latest trainings that I did, and she's a coach, she's a therapist, she used to have a podcast, and she had some really, really wonderful insight into meditation. She had just recently finished doing like a 200-day meditation practice. Wow. And sort of how she uses her meditation practice to allow creativity to flow. She also spoke about her work with her clients, like as a coach, as a therapist, how she sort of uses her creative process in giving them tools and skills to work with as well. And that was a very, very inspiring episode. Another one of my favorites was with another fellow podcaster. I believe it was episode 10. His name is Kane Silver, and he hosts the Ins and Outs podcast. And we were good friends from my time when I was living in the UK. He's a dancer, choreographer. He's now created a mentorship program for young aspiring dancers coming into the professional industry. So that was just a really fun conversation. If there's anyone out there that likes to listen to podcasts about the entertainment industry, being a dancer, he talks a lot about the ins and outs, like the sort of background of the entertainment industry with dancers, choreographers, singers. He's got all kinds of guests on there. And I would highly recommend checking out the Hollywood Jade episode. That was episode 2. So I do guest interviews every 2 weeks. So every other Friday, I release a guest episode. And then in between those weeks, I actually have some solo episodes, like kind of micro episodes. I keep them to about 10 to 12 minutes. And I call them Free Flow Fridays. And that's just me kind of picking a topic, or if someone sends me a question and kind of wants me to speak about it, or yeah, just different things that come up for me. So like I said, I just recorded one for this Friday that's about self-love, self-compassion. I did one previously about the art of listening. So there's some little in-between nuggets in between those bigger interviews with guests. But yeah, I would love for people to check it out. I'm so open to feedback and questions. Like, I love getting in touch with any of the listeners. If anybody wants to ask me anything or, tell me what they thought of the episodes, I'm so open to that.
Fantastic. And are you on Clubhouse?
Yes, sir. Yes.
How much
Yeah.
are you spending your time on Clubhouse? Because I'm spending way too much time on Clubhouse.
I know. I had to turn my notifications off, Wayne, because it was just taking over my life. And so I sort of know, okay, on this day at this time, I like going into this room. On this day at this time, I like going onto this room. And then, if I've got some free time, I usually like to listen to it when I'm like cooking or cleaning. If I don't have a podcast episode that I want to listen to, I'll hop onto Clubhouse. But it has been absolutely incredible for me and for making those connections. The podcast rooms in there are so useful, so informative. And what I think Bryan was mentioning is towards the end of his interview as well, the podcasting community has been so incredibly welcoming, so warm, so helpful. I feel confident enough to sort of like send a DM to some of these more experienced podcasters and ask them questions, and they get right back to me, and they're so kind and they're so encouraging. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet this community, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
It's really amazing. I think it's a godsend. And in a way, right, we are so much sick and tired of Zoom. And like even this particular festival, right, where we have to turn the camera on, is probably a format that is not going to stick around forever. The reason being that it consumes more power, electricity, more carbon footprint. I do think that doing a festival like of this scale, right, in Clubhouse makes a lot of sense, because not just in terms of reducing the carbon footprint, but having people in the audience who can just raise their hand, come up and pose a question to you or to me immediately. Yeah. I think that's what we all love, which is that instant
cool
feedback, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like now doing this with you on screen is like detox for Clubhouse.
Right.
And get away from
break. Yeah.
But I did contemplate, like, should I simulcast, this particular conversation over to Clubhouse as well? Last minute, I decided not to do it. I'm like, better focus on this format.
Right.
100%. If I really want to do a festival in Clubhouse, it will be 100% on Clubhouse. So
right.
not have two worlds meet so soon.
It's a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's great. Dream big, dream big. Like, I don't see why you couldn't do it, but yeah, maybe for the next one.
In fact, I'm putting together a festival, and this is maybe a time to ask you whether you would like to come back. It's basically a PodFest Asia post-festival in conversation series, which is conducted 100% on Clubhouse.
Cool.
So it's basically the same format with the cameras turned off. So we could do this, lying on a bed and not having to wash up or do our makeup, and we can just and do a summit, like even if you want to. So it's like it's more convenient, right? And let's maybe do that in the month ahead. Probably in March, there won't be a PodFest Asia in this format. It will be a post-festival event on week 1 and 2 in March. So looking forward to invite you back to maybe share with us, what you're up to with your Compassionate Creative podcast. At the same time, to tell our listeners in this part of the world what we can look out for in your future episodes. Are you up for it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Please, anytime, any place, you let me know, Wayne. I will be there. I always say this to my guests too. We have our conversation. We've created a relationship. You will not be able to get rid of me now. I'm your friend. I'm part of your life now. So anytime, please, I would be so happy to join you.
Thanks for agreeing to do this. Thanks for agreeing to do our next festival in Clubhouse. So I look forward to see you again. So reluctantly, we have to let you go. Any last words, message for our audience before you say goodbye?
Oh, just thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Wayne. Thank you so much for creating this platform. To the listeners, thank you so much for holding this space and for supporting the podcasting community. It's so it's so wonderful to have you. And, you are the reason why we create these shows and why we create this content. It's all for the listeners. So thank you.
Thank you for your lovely comment. So Charlene Dinger, I'll see you very soon in Clubhouse.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Have a beautiful day. Thanks.
Same to you. Take care of yourself over there.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you.
That's Charlene Dinger. Watch or listen, download, stream her Compassionate Creative Podcast, especially episode 2. I think that's a episode that she was recommending that she was very excited about. So let's check out episode 2 for that particular podcast show. And we're going to announce a post-festival event. And right now, we are gradually filling up all the slots for our calendar in March, especially week 1 and 2, where we'll do a festival. This entire festival, only 100% in Clubhouse. So if you don't have an iPhone, I'm sorry, for the time being, it's still iOS only. But this would probably be a good reason for you to either borrow one iPad or an iPhone and just get onto Clubhouse. I think in terms of the amount of great content and podcasters who are living and breathing there in Clubhouse right now is incredible. So we should maybe switch our format, regularly and make sure that we keep things fresh as well. So next month, our festival will be entirely in Clubhouse. So without further ado, let's bring on our next guest. A little bit of introduction. Marc. He's a long-time relationship builder and also business professional. After a long career as a Wall Street relationship manager and sales executive on the trading desk of New York City, he launched his own sales consultancy. Marc now teaches digital transformation of the sales process using social media strategy and content marketing. So through his communications firm, Invictus, Marc helps companies build customer loyalty through modern business strategy. He has published several hundred articles and videos outlining how to build client trust to drive repeat revenue. His work has been featured in major media outlets such as Bloomberg, Traders Magazine, CNBC, and various business podcasts. So this spring, we'll see the release of his first book, Content is the New Sales, which outlines digital relationship management techniques for the new economy. And he has a new podcast to announce. So in fact, he's launching his podcast on the festival. Let's, without further ado, invite Marc C. Angelos on stage. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Wayne, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. This is a terrific forum that you put together here. Lots of good value.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your lovely comments. And you've been putting in so many great comments over since we started this midnight session in Singapore. And thank you for tuning in from the start, from the beginning. And you're still with us. So I'm really appreciative because I know that people don't watch the entire 48-hour live stream. So thank you for sticking with us. And tell us about this new podcast you're launching. We are super excited in Asia to know what you're coming up with next.
Thank you, Wayne. And by the way, the reason we're watching this and loving it is because the value you're bringing. So thank you for doing this. Briefly on me, I am a businessman. I know everyone here is a podcaster. I come from the world of Wall Street. Communication is the thing that I want to bring forward. And so on March 6th, I'll be launching my podcast, which is going to be called Social Sales Saloon. And the bottom line is, I wanted to provide a little bit of an insight for your audiences on what's coming into the world of podcasting. You guys already know this, but the business community is coming. So I know the number one question you get asked, Wayne, is how do I monetize? How do I make money podcasting? I'm here to tell you that that's coming. You're this close. And the reason being, the sales front end of business everywhere has been shut down, as we know, by this pandemic. And so what's happening is all these big businesses are facing literally an extinction level event, right? They can't meet their customers. So I'm talking big firms, Flex and China Aviation. Like there are firms that have to pivot or they go out of business. And so what they're doing is looking into the digital channels. As you well know, podcasters by definition are communicators, right? These are folks who enjoy, like yourself, just putting in together networks of people. The fact that you were not made to put on this whole PodFest Asia, no one's making you network with folks. You reach out, you do it because you want to. And that skill, that is a real skill, is the far end of the technical skills that we've all learned. Everyone knows about the value of coding and, programming. There's a communication skill here, and that's becoming the biggest thing that business needs right now. And folks who know how to do it, like the podcasting community, are going to be tapped on the shoulder to help figure out, how do I help communicate my message? And that is what's going to upend the world of podcasting. It's a good thing. I mean, in the end, all the people that fear all the inrush of the Coca-Colas and the Apple, it doesn't matter Because if you're good at communicating and networking and putting together like you are, Wayne, doing things like this, if you've got that skill set, you'll win. And I feel like a lot of people are still trapped in the old, I'm trying to get my download numbers up. I'm trying to figure out, I heard Bryan talk about the analytics checking. It's true, but it's not really the relevant thing. The tail is the analytics, your download numbers. The dog is how much value are you bringing? If you can connect people and create value for these businesses who need it and want to pay for it, you're going to have all the download numbers you can handle. So I just wanted to bring to the attention of the community that there's a sea change is occurring right now as these big firms have realized, oh my gosh, the digital channels are the way to do this. Here they come. Here come the dollars. Here come all of it. But that's not the point of it. The point isn't about making money. The point is the skill of connecting businesses to their customers is now becoming the most important thing in business. So speaking to that, I've written a book that's coming out in a few months. I've got the podcast I'm launching, and I'm not the only one. A lot of folks recognize this. I myself, as you referenced, I'm a relationship management guy. I'm not a guru. I'm not even really specifically a sales guy. I'm a person who builds connection between businesses. That's what I've done on Wall Street for all those years. And the digital channels now become the way to do this. And people get confused by these screens, but it doesn't make a difference. If you're going through a microphone or you're going through a lens, the bottom line is there emotional connection? Does Wayne feel like he knows Marc? Does Marc feel like he understands why Wayne does what he does? Like that little thing, that's the gateway to all the revenue for every business in the future. And I think that firms are starting to recognize this because they can't go meet their clients. They can't get out and have drinks and cocktails. And these big businesses, for all these years, it's been work your way up the corporate chain. Suddenly, they don't know how to do this. And you guys, Wayne, I mean, you specifically have literally paved the way. The podcast community is so personal and so closely knit because it wasn't about business. It was about connection. And that's the skill these companies need. So I really think that what you're about to see is a massive evolution. Like I said, it's a extinction level event facing these corporations. And so here they come. And guys like you and girls like you are going to be perfectly positioned. So what should you do, right? That's the big question. I think the number one thing you need to recognize is learning the skill of sharing stories, which again is what all these podcasters do. I don't care if you're doing comedy skits or true crime on the internet. It doesn't matter, or business. It's, can you connect with people? Can you share stories about? If I tell you, I used to work in fintech. My world was I would meet with hedge fund managers and explain to them how the AI works in the software so it learns how to trade like they trade as a person. And I would explain the 2000 state variables and how the evolution of the microcircuitry. At the end of the day, these big billion-dollar people would be like, dude, I don't understand a word you said, but are you going to be there if I have a problem? Can I call you? And that's it. Connection, relationship. That's what drives business. That's what drives podcasting. So I think that what you're doing here is amazing work. The fact that you're knitting together disparate folks. Like, I honestly have no business being on a podcast display like this, but because of you and your work, you're connecting folks, and one thing leads to another. Many years ago, business was about, just like I said, getting a good degree, getting the right school, kissing the right butt. Let's be honest. It's not that anymore. This whole work from home, remote environment, this pandemic, new skills are needed on top of what we knew. All of a sudden, it's a completely different world. And I know people all think 2020 was such a tough year. I got to beg to differ. Change, if you believe that there's opportunity in change, then this right now, this moment in this window of time represents the greatest opportunity any of your listeners will ever have in their life. Like right now, it pales in comparison. All these other, I'm talking like the 2008 collapse. I was a Lehman Brothers guy, by the way. I was on that trading desk when that firm went under. It was upending change. Right now, the opportunity is greater than it's ever been. It's the evolution of communication. It's the transfer of business into people. And that's where podcasters are built for this, man. This is your world. Like, we're just living in it. And I really feel like you're about to show everyone how to do it the right way. It'll filter. It's a self-filtering mechanism where all these folks that just want to make a quick buck, they'll fall by the wayside because you can tell You're on Clubhouse, right, Wayne? I know you are. I hear you. I hear the conversations. You can tell on Clubhouse the minute someone's talking when they're trying to get you to sign up for their guru masterclass. And you can also tell when there's someone with real intent who's trying to help. And that, I'll call it the BS detector, for want of a better term, but that thing's real. The younger generation's better at it than the older, but it becomes the thing now. And so podcasters, this is it, man. Like, you understand communication. You understand how to network. You understand, and all of your community does, how to piece together greater value from multiple people in a beneficial way. But that's what business should have always been about. But it became about the value exchange got convoluted along the way years ago. And so then there was the whole metrics thing. And you still see it in podcasting a bit, right? The advertising wants to know the download numbers. But at the end, it's about depth, not width. It's about if you put out a call and your community responds, if Wayne posts something and 1,000 people jump in on the engagement, that's worth money. You don't have to know how. The fact that you said to me, thanks for being involved in that's it. There's value there. What is that value? How do you quantify that? You don't need to. I'm telling you, if you can build connection between people and organizations, and it doesn't matter what or where, but if you can do that, the money comes, the opportunity comes. I mean, I posted a lot of stuff on LinkedIn when you reached out to me, and we've had a great conversation back and forth. I would now bend over backwards for you. We've never met in person, but yet this is the new reality. And so relationship forming, podcasters built for it, right? Don't you think?
100%. And I think your comments and you nailed it in the head so succinctly clear for us. You broke it down so clear for us. So I'm like I super love positive people, especially those who are talking optimism. I think majority of time, I could already sense your optimism is overwhelming, to be honest. But also that is great because my tribe are positive people who I love. I super love positive people. So what you have just mentioned is something that we have grown to realize, during when this pandemic hit and when it stretches out, and right now we're still not out of it yet. I am still not able to travel overseas to see my bucket list bands perform live or in action. So what do? We podcast from home, right? Right. Or we find things to do at home. And I think many people are going through that. Also, it's a year of reflection for many people who are always thinking of only monetary gains, for example, or thinking only being transactional. Now they are maybe going inside and really touching their inner feelings. What are the things that you could do to actually help others or lift others, right? Podcasting is a really great medium and vehicle to do it. And of course, I know that you're an expert when it comes to content, being regarded as a new sales. You even wrote a book about it, or you even, go to some keynote conferences and speak about it. So maybe this is a topic where you and I can riff a little bit more on, whether content is the new sales and whether podcasting and Clubhouse is the medium to continuously deliver these great content and also deliver these positive messages.
I think Clubhouse is it's the right vein. We all know how hot it is right now. There's a little bit of FOMO, so it's a little, it's getting a good push from that. I posted a piece on LinkedIn a while ago, 16 best practices on Clubhouse. It's free if anyone wants it. But the point is this: Clubhouse is this combination of, what do they call it? Half conference, half podcast. It's an opportunity to network that you don't have right now. None of us. There's no more gathering and mingling. I can literally speak with people and just give them a little bit of advice, or I can ask. There's always something to learn. Clubhouse provides a live back and forth, as you know. It's real time, so people are a little less guarded. It's not curated content that I need to worry. Even this will get on record, and I need to think, what shirt am I wearing? Clubhouse is pretty much Wayne and I talking. What advice can I help this guy with? What can I ask him? And so that's how the formation of relationship happens. That's how you actually build rapport. It's authenticity and all those fancy words in marketing. I'm not a marketer, right? I'm in the content marketing game. I don't consider myself a marketer. I'm not even a sales guy. I've done it all these years. I'm a relationship guy. If you build that part right, the rest of it happens. And Clubhouse provides that opportunity. I think folks should be getting on Clubhouse for two reasons. Number one, it allows you to practice your chops of networking, right? There's a skill. It's just like the cocktail party we all know about. You don't want to talk too much. You want to be able to help. But also, this is the evolution of communication. Same thing with podcasting. In the old days, I could get out. I mean, we all know the B2B content problem on LinkedIn. It's just me, and push. In the old days, I could get out there and pound my customers' sales meetings. I know all about it. Enter it in the CRM. How many calls have I made today? I live that life. Wall Street's all about that. But that doesn't work anymore. What works now is there's an inbound direct message, and I really want to hear from this guy because you know what? I see it's from Wayne, and I like Wayne. That's it. That value exchange now happens because of the relationship only. Years ago, it was 6 degrees of separation, they called it, right? You could get to anybody through enough of the network. Now, you're 1 DM away from anybody in the world. The head of the government, you're 1 DM. So that means the definition of that now is you need to have a direct relationship skill set and be practicing it. And Clubhouse lets you do that. Clubhouse, a lot of people are in the get rich quick rooms and how do I become a billionaire? And that's the dark side of Clubhouse. You got to be careful. A little bit of snake oil sales going on in there. However, it also is it's a place for great people to mingle. And so I feel like anyone who's a fan of like rock and roll or maybe any music, there's always a hotbed of musicians in some city somewhere. And there's 5 or 6 great musicians who are flip-flopping between bands. And then boom, some super group emerges out of there and they get signed to the record label. And now you have a Nirvana out of Seattle, or now you have, Guns N' Roses out of Los Angeles, or whoever. We're in that phase right now. This whole pandemic, as you said, is the reformation of business. I can go back into Wall Street. I don't want to. I was this big 6-figure guy, blah, blah, blah. It's not interesting. Why? Because that's not what I want to do, and nor anyone else right now. People are getting back to what really drives them. So you're seeing the formation. This is the time of networking. This is the time where when this thing passes, pandemic will pass one day. We all know it, and we all get back to normal living. And at that point, boom, new sets of companies are out. New teams, we'll call them tiger teams. Call them whatever you want. There's new groups of organizations of affiliated networks officially in a company or unaffiliated, where I need something and I call my buddy Wayne and he's able to put someone in touch. And next thing you know, Wayne's got stock in an IPO. Like, this is how it works. I see this every day on Wall Street. All these folks that form the right network end up with the money down the road. But you got to have the right intent. So form the right network. Help people. This is the time to help people. And you can tell if you're really helping someone out, they will fall all over themselves to return that favor. You don't have to ask. So this is how business works now. In the old days, I gave you a product and then I build you. Now it's I work for free. I'm giving you value, giving you value, giving you value. And you, if you want to, will pay me. I got to earn it. But if I do it right, I don't ever have to ask. True story. I'm in the content marketing game. I asked a customer yesterday who I've done a lot of work for. I literally doubled my rate because she's gotten some really good opportunities out of it. And she said to me, Mark, I actually was prepared to pay you more. That's fine. Let's keep it at double. And I was like, oh, the value comes. The pay comes on the back end of the value. The point is, right now, everyone listening should be thinking value first. Deliver as much as you can. Connect with as many people as you can. Podcasting's built for this. Like I said, I'm not a podcaster. I'm launching one. I'll try my handle at delivering value through this medium. The medium is secondary. We're not, you have to think of yourself as a value deliverer first. Your medium is second. I don't care if it's through the screens, vlogs, podcasts. It doesn't matter. If you're that person, you're going to get wealthy. You're going to have connections. But more importantly, you're going to be happy. You'll like what you're doing because it's fun. It's fun to live the life you want to live. It's there for all of us now, guys. Business is upside down. Money is in flow. People are in need. What can you do to deliver that value? What medium is yours? I think podcasting is great. Years ago, I went to university in America, and I did the right school. But I was in a band. Probably won't surprise you. I sang in a band, and I recognized. What's that?
What's the name of your band and what genre was that?
It was called On Holiday, and it was classic rock. So we played, Bruce Springsteen and Pearl Jam and that stuff. The point is this, though. I loved that. And I realized, this, in addition to the skill of learning my education, there's another skill here of connecting with people, delivering value in a room. I mean, it sounds silly, but if you're in a bar and you're playing the music, you're delivering entertainment value. And so that's my point, that the podcast you do doesn't matter. There's no I'm a business guy. It doesn't have to be business. There's value in entertainment. There's value in comedy. There's value in all of it. be the best you can at it. You don't have to be the best. Just be good enough that you're helping people, because someone is going to reach out to you and say, I loved what you said, Wayne. I loved what you were very helpful in a way that you, Wayne, won't even know you were, but you delivered something. At that point, opportunity, fun, network, it all comes. But we're in the phase of life right now where the opportunity is being generated. I think it was Jim Rohn, old speaker. It takes time. You get paid for bringing value to the market, but you don't get paid for the time. It takes time to bring value to the market. We're in that window now of time. Start thinking of what can I deliver and how can I best deliver it and to whom? It's a service thing. It's a service mentality. And once you have that, people will find you. I'm telling you. Like I worked at a gazillion brokerage firms. You name them. You can look at my LinkedIn, and they're big ones. They're Morgan Stanley and UBS and Barclays and Lehman Brothers, all on New York's trading desks. So, that whole scene. I jumped jobs every few years because it was the same customer base. It was the same set of hedge funds that would follow me. Why? It wasn't the company. It's because they trusted me. And that's not that I'm great. There's a lot of people like me. It's that I was looking out for their interests. I'll tell you a story. When Lehman Brothers went out of business, the week that they were going down, the stock price was cratering and everyone was like, what's going to happen? And no one knew. I went through the ranks of my customers, and I found out who was owed money by my firm, because they had products called soft dollars where you can trade and get a credit, and then the company sends you money. And I called these guys up and I'm like, listen, I don't know anything, but if this firm goes out of business, you're out of money. So we owe you $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is. If I'm you, I would ask for it back. A bunch of guys made the call, got their checks that day. Later that week, the firm's out of business. I get 10 or 15 calls the following week. I have no job now. These guys call me up and they're like, Mark, I don't know what happens with you, but whatever you need, I'm in your corner. You got my business. Whenever you get situated, you let me know. I didn't get paid to make those calls. I wasn't trying to look good. I'm looking out for these guys. And that's how you have to think right now. Again, I'm not special. You can do this. It's a service mentality. This is the time.
Fantastic. I think your story of a back Wall Street guy turned podcaster is fascinating. And how you broke it down for us using podcasts as relationship selling, right? That's something new that I learned, every day when I meet different podcasters from different walks of life, different background, and we all like launching podcasts, doing podcasting now. And it's great to have a myriad of so many different characters, different backgrounds, different trades and profession doing this message delivery platform through the vehicle, which is a podcast, and now Clubhouse. I think that this means that every day these trends and these vehicle or platforms are changing so rapidly, and it's like this month it could be Clubhouse, next month it could be Mark Cuban's Fireplace, or maybe a clone of Clubhouse.
Twitter's launching Spaces
in China that really takes off. Who knows? And every day we have to keep pace with all this. How do you keep pace? How do you actually constantly do the same thing, but in different multi-channels? And how do you actually gauge whether you are not guilty of repeating this shiny product syndrome problem that many creators, by the way, they face this problem. Many people who are creating content, they face this problem as well. Like maybe they will be spending tons of time on YouTube. Now they have to switch to Clubhouse format, for example. And podcasters have to do live podcasting in Clubhouse. So how do you prevent a shiny product syndrome?
Okay, your audience is not going to like this answer, Wayne. I'm not going to lie. You got to be okay with sucking. It's just the way it works. Like, you have to try and just do your best. I'm not a podcaster, right? I'm a business guy, like we said. I'll try it. I'm on Clubhouse all the time. I moderate rooms for customers of mine in the content marketing business all the time. I'm not trained in that. I'm not, and again, I'm nothing special. You're doing this. Nobody appointed you the guy to put together PodFest Asia. You just took it upon yourself. That's the approach now. The old days of here's the map, follow the map are over. Clubhouse is definitely going to have competition. Twitter is launching Spaces, right? It's going to become a feature, not a specialty thing. All these platforms, you're telling me that Mark Zuckerberg's not thinking about a Facebook version of Clubhouse? And it will transform. It's going to, I don't know what it becomes, but you got to keep with it. And the way you keep with it is by trying. There's companies right now, I'm talking to them, there's Wall Street firms that are launching podcasts, and they're trying, and they're doing, and God bless them. They're doing the best they can, because there's a ton of firms that aren't. They're waiting. They're hoping. You are taking a shot here, Wayne. You're trying to put together, you're making things happen. And I mean like you specifically. And a lot of your audience is doing that. Everyone that's out there putting out a regular podcast, even if the download numbers aren't there, but they are delivering, they are showing up, they're doing it. That's it. That's what it takes. So Clubhouse comes along. Let's try it out. Let's see what it is. And if you can get people involved, help people out. To my point, I put out a list of 16 best practices for Clubhouse. Great. Someone should add numbers, 20 through 50. It's the way it works now. Do what you can do where you are. It's going to keep evolving. It's going to evolve faster. In my book, I wrote, we're living through exponential times. It used to be that you could learn everything you need to know and you were good. Those days have been over for how many years, right? Our parents lived in a world where they didn't have to constantly learn. Communication is the key now. In a world where I can rent any technical skill on Fiverr or Upwork, then the value becomes the communication of value itself, right? I can piece together value. We'll call it a company, but it might even be this affiliation of network of people that think the same way and deliver it to serve it in some fashion for an audience. Podcasting is a great example of it. If Clubhouse is the new thing, get on Clubhouse. I'll tell you now, like the first Clubhouse I did was kind of janky. I didn't really know. It was like, okay, I thought it was a keynote speech type thing. Nope. It's chatting. Oh, great. I could do that. Now I know. That's how it works. You got to be willing to try. People are so worried. Perfection is the enemy of good enough is it. That's it. It's good enough right now. If people are willing, and I don't mean just people, I mean companies. If you're willing to make a misstep, then you're going to be fine. The problem is nobody wants to make the mistake. They don't want to look stupid. I'm a Wall Street guy in the old days, right? Suit and tie, the expensive leather shoes, all that bit. Here I am on a podcast. Like, don't you think there's a huge bunch of former coworkers of mine who are like, the heck is Angelos doing? It doesn't matter. It's Bruce Lee. Go ahead. Bruce Lee said, I'm not here to live my life up to your expectations and you're not for me. Something like that. The point is this. Do it. Do the best you can. Keep trying. The fact that you're doing Clubhouse, you're experimenting, and I mean you specifically, Wayne, you're like trying it out. You're getting people involved in it. That's dynamite. That's great. What you've put together here, don't you think there'll be back-end residual benefit that you don't even see coming in years ahead? Don't you think?
Definitely. And thank you so much for breaking it down for us so succinctly clear. And I really love, your energy as well. And before we have to let us know, when are you seeing action next on Clubhouse? Where can we find your podcast? How many episodes do you plan to do? And what are the upcoming episodes all about? What are the interesting and exciting guests that people in Asia should not miss?
Sure. So I'll be doing, for the podcast, that'll be a weekly. It starts March 6th, and it's going to be around social sales tips and tricks, things you need. It's this stuff. How do I actually make connection with people through the channels if I can't meet them? On Clubhouse, I'm on there weekly, to be honest. I'm either doing my own or I'm doing with customers of mine who want me to help them moderate it. And most of the topics are around marketing and sales. I really think marketing and sales is the same thing now. That's the point of my book. So I've got a book coming out, and that's around how content now becomes sales. They've come together. So, but I'm not here to pitch, Wayne. Honestly, I'm here to implore a handful of listeners. If you folks can start to figure out how to deliver value for others, it's coming. Don't worry about quantifying it. Don't worry if you're trying to sound like the right person or do it the right way or what the money's going to look like. Put that aside. I'm telling you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks for having me. A lot of fun.
All your wisdom. Come back next time. Maybe come back during our post-festival Clubhouse event. I'm going to insert you in our program the next time. So I'll send you more details after the festival is wrapped up. Let's get in touch soon. Okay?
Thank you so much. Best of luck. Great work here. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Martin Atkins, I can't wait to see you. And finally, we are face to face for the first time ever. Are you there?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm great. We were supposed to meet at South by Southwest last year, March. I think you were supposed to keynote at one of the sessions, right?
Yeah.
I was supposed to see you and finally meet you because you came on my show, I think, a year ago.
A while ago, yeah.
To be there at this time and to see you talk to a South by Southwest audience, but of course it didn't happen. So what happened during the times when this pandemic hit right until now? How has the year been for you so far, Martin?
It's been pretty good. I think we were. I I was just listening to that last guy, actually. The last guy you had on, it was really good. I have a different Bruce Lee quote, which I really love. He was, he wrote his first book lying in a hospital bed with a broken back, which I think that's brilliant. He said, you need to make stepping stones out of stumbling blocks. I thought that's my favorite Bruce Lee quote. So what have I been doing for the last year? I was really fortunate in that, I work with students at Millikan University, like 2 hours south of Chicago. It's my program down there, music industry program. And we had a conference that we put together called MMX, Midwest Music Expo. And the first one we did was very good. We had like 4 weeks to set it up. People came from about 250-mile radius, and it was okay. And then we were doing 2 a year. The second one,
Oh, I think you just froze a little bit. Yeah.
oh, am I back?
You're back now. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Please continue. Please continue.
We realized that we were going to have to cancel the in-person conference. And as soon as we canceled it, I just thought, well, this is wrong. It's bad for the students. We need to show people that we are going to carry on and find the silver lining. So we went ahead and announced a digital and online version, and we started to see the benefits. So Lol Tolhurst, who played drums with The Cure, he's a friend of mine. He lives in Los Angeles. There was no way he was going to fly from LA to Chicago, drive for 3 hours to Decatur, be overnight, do our thing, fly back. It would have cost us thousands of dollars and taken 3 days. But he was absolutely prepared to spend an hour and a half online with us. And so we started to assemble a lineup that tripled our registrations and had people, instead of from 250 miles away from Decatur, we had people from 23 countries. So I saw very quickly, this is as bad as the pandemic is, and it's bad. It's not the end of the world. There's just, if you pivot, there's opportunity over here, there's opportunity over there. And so I remember thinking in May, that's it. I don't have a summer. I'm just going to keep doing events. And at first they were kind of helpful events, like how to tour, how to screen print, how to screen print these bags that made a $15,000 gross difference to a coffee company, how to do this, how to do that. And then I started to realize that fans of the bands I'd been in, Public Image, Killing Joke, Ministry, Pigface, etc., was sitting at home. So we started to craft anniversary celebrations. So the 40th anniversary of the recording of Paris Au Printemps with PIL, we did an event. We just did an event last week, the 30th anniversary of the recording of In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up, which was Ministry. And we, different people would join us, people who mixed live or worked in the studio or keyboards, or Chris Connolly, the singer from Ministry. People would join us, and we'll do these 2, 3, 4 hour sessions that have got nothing to do really with the content. They have everything to do with community, the chat off to the side, and connecting people. So that's what I've been doing, working on new classes, new ideas, trying not to, I'm not ready to jump into Clubhouse yet. I'm just like, I'm waiting for Facebook to rip it off. Then I'll get on the Facebook version. But just there's a lot going on. We just had 3 feet of snow here in Chicago. So I'm just slightly emotionally exhausted from dealing with all of that.
It's fantastic that how you are always pivoting and trying out and experimenting new things. I don't see any other musician out there who are online as often as you are, and doing so many events, online events, and basically celebrating and commemorating anniversaries of iconic albums and even iconic tours, like In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up, which is with Ministry, which you did in 1989. I think everyone from our generation, we still have so many recollections of watching that VHS tape where you
Yeah.
started, I think The Missing together with Bill Friedlin, and basically the two of you were just dueling with each other on the drums and making that song so kick-ass. And decades later, we're still talking about it because it deserves to be spoken about. It deserves to be discussed. Fans like us love, attending your online events because you brought so many great memories for us. Allow us to deep dive into your psyche and, of course, what you were thinking, during those times, those early days when you played with iconic bands like Ministry. Of course, Nine Inch Nails, right, one of your former bands, where you played on a Grammy Award-winning record on the track Wish. I always try to mimic your drumming, which is that Pearl Diddle bit. I think so many bands and drummers have ripped you off. But could you tell us, how did you come up with that part for Wish?
I've been a member of a ton of bands. I was a member of PIL, member of Killing Joke. I started Pigface. I just worked with Ministry on that tour, and I worked with Nine Inch Nails. I'm in the Head Like a Hole video. I'm not sure. I think they stayed at my loft, and they felt like, hey, come and be in this video. And I threw my drums all over but the part for Wish, it's basically, it's a beat from a song called Ballroom Blitz by The Sweet. It's a pop song that I listened to as a young kid in the 70s, probably. And I just love that song, a little shuffle beat. And I think we just sped it up and messed it up a little bit in the studio. Yeah. But the thing that I get from these events, I've done it especially with PIL, like the anniversary of being on the John Peel show, the anniversary of Paris, the anniversary of every date on the American tour. We kind of followed the tour along. Is that I get the luxury of sitting down and thinking about that time. And then somebody will send me a set list or a photograph or a review, which tells me my recollection was correct or terribly wrong. And it kind of, it's an interesting place to be in, to have the luxury of spending time looking through the parts of my past. It's been really good. It's been really good.
And it's really great for us listening in, watching you riffing and jamming on these stories. I think these stories are basically the shortest distance between people, right? And when you come up with stories, it brings us closer to you as well. Because in the past, we were only connected by listening to your tapes or your records. And for people like us, podcasters in Asia, for example, we love the music of Ministry, we love the music of Pigface or PIL and so many great bands that you were in. And we didn't have a chance because you never toured Asia. I think you probably only toured Japan with PIL in the early years, right?
Yeah, we did Japan,
When you actually told us stories about your Japan trip and also performing in Japan, that, brings us so much closer together. Like, oh, you were in Asia. Like, you're talking about Asian people, Asian culture, and Asian food, for example. Those stories are incredible.
Well, and well, thank you. And I was in Tokyo when my coffee, Get the F Out of Bed, launched in Tokyo. And I just threw a picture up that I'd taken from the stage. Basically, I was doing a PIL presentation in a bar. And I just said, hey, if this is you in this photograph, come on down to my thing. Well, it turned out it was a photograph from Osaka or somewhere else. But the wonderful collision of the internet, I get this message on Instagram. It's like, well, that was actually Osaka. But that's my husband in the middle. And we live down the street from the place you're at now. And I said, well, come on down. And it turned out that they weren't very well. They were sick. I said, well, I'll come to your house. and I think they just thought I was crazy at that point. But I would have gone to their house and read to them or something. But it's been really great. So many musicians, especially at the beginning of this and still now, they're still fiddling with however they're going to try and do a live show. And we broadcast a Pigface show. We had 5 cameras at the end of 2019. We just broadcast that. And it was cool. But I try and tell people, you're not going, even if you do a great live broadcast of a live show, you're not going to recreate that energy, the sweat, the vibe, the physical, what a large sound system does to your body, right? There's the physical component. But I know when we go out with Pigface, I leave it all on the stage. All of my energy is on the stage. I will talk to anybody during the day, and I'll talk to anybody after a show for maybe half an hour. And then I'm asleep in my bunk, crying, massaging ointments into my old knees, But now I can sit and talk to people for 4 hours. They can be shy, not say anything. An hour later, ask me a question, remember the question they forgot, and we're still talking and connecting with people. And so if you're trying to do what we used to do now, it's a mistake. But there are so many things you can do so much better than we can when we're on the road. And I think Melissa Etheridge is doing a fantastic job online with subscriptions from her fans. When everything gets back to normal, and I don't think they will, because we've all been changed by this. But when she goes out on the road again, she's going to have her 6-camera portable live Zoom rig with her, and she'll be reaching out to the special VIP guests, but the fans who can't see her for another 3 months. She'll be planting the seeds of her own success with this portable rig that she's built. There's so much inspiring stuff going on right now.
100%. And of course, early on we mentioned about Clubhouse, but of course there's also this world of podcasting that basically this festival is for. We have so many podcasters that come on to talk about their shows as well. So I've always been a fan of your content, of your written content as well, not just your music and your drumming, which I think you're one of my top 5 drummers in the industrial rock music realm. And one of your books really struck a chord with me. That was Thur Smart and Break the Band. It was a book that I read 3 times, front to back, cover to cover. And the reason why I love it so much, because you're teaching musicians to be great marketers as well, which is something that I think many musicians are not great at. And to find someone to be able to, share wisdom, or even having a book that we can borrow wisdom from to learn about marketing. Not just because, I'm a musician, for example. Like, I haven't played music for like 20, 30 years, I think. My last band actually ended like 20 years ago or more than that. Oh. And ever since, I've been embarking on a career of doing podcasting, for example. But I've learned so much by reading a book about marketing, about finding opportunities, about experimenting, about growing a tribe, about building community. Even like all these strategies, like finding opportunities to do events, like what you're now pivoting to, online events, and finding different creative ways to make things happen from nothing. I think that is really inspiring for me, reading that book. Are you planning to start a podcast to serialize all these awesome knowledge, wisdom, and value bombs that you drop in that book, Thur Smart and Break the Band?
Oh, I like I'm going to steal your phrase, value bomb. If I do start a podcast, I'll have like a little graphic that goes, hey, here's another. Bruce Lee said, make stepping stones out of stumbling blocks. Boom, value bomb. No, well, so let me just, no, I'm not planning on doing a podcast. I did start a free online touring class, which was 2 or 3 hours on a Monday night. And there's so many people from so many different time zones. We ended up doing a recap on a Saturday morning, which I could have just played the video, you played the recording, but we wanted to connect with people, so we ended up doing it again. Here's my newer book. This is Band Smart, which is the sister book, the prequel to Thur Smart, if you like. And I'm not trying to sell my book. But anybody who wants to go to martinatkins.com, just go and download it. There's never been a better time to read 600 pages of I think there's 200, 300, 400 different people in Band Smart, as well as my own irreverent sense of humor in there. But I'm not planning on a podcast, although maybe I should do that. I don't know.
Well, the reason why I'm asking that question, not just because I have a festival of podcasting, but because I've seen so many interesting things that are happening, especially by the big tech firms. And we all know that big tech firms, people like Apple, right? They kind of, are able to predict how consumerism or people consume even content, how they're going to change, in terms of their behavior as well. They came out with this really, not this one, a really great pair of immersive binaural 3D, enabled headphones recently, wireless plus. And because they want to tap on the technology of, Dolby Atmos, I think they came out with technology that allows you to create immersive audio content. Mm-hmm. And some podcasters are now experimenting with this form of storytelling because it's so immersive that you could probably hear Martin Atkins playing drums at a corner when he's maybe narrating or doing voiceover about a story about how he actually had a, on-stage drumming do-off with Bill Rifling in 1989. And it's like, you could hear, you could imagine, this is so immersive, you can paint those images by just wearing that great pair of Apple earphones. And it's another way to actually bring creativity and storytelling to the next level. And of course, we know that iPhones, ever since they came out, it basically changed the whole industry. Apps are being, developed and made, right? And then you have so many tech startups, all these software companies that come out as a result of an iPhone. Now we're thinking that Apple is creating that. And also they have a smart speaker that you can just ask Siri, I want to hear the story of Martin Atkins telling the story of his, in case you didn't feel like showing up tour. And maybe zoom in on that particular segment when he talks about Bill Rifling and paying tribute to his dear friend. And the smart speaker immediately skips to that particular segment. And we are able to get your voice fill up our entire apartment. That is something that what podcasting content can do because of technology. So it's something that I hope that I could actually catch you, in more shows, not just during interviews like this, but also you having your voice fill up my entire apartment where you tell the story, where you craft that soundscapes and that immersive experience for us so that we are able to travel back to those days when you were touring with ministry.
Well, so I like all this stuff. I have this ridiculously expensive binaural microphone. And it's over here that you can talk behind somebody and it does that. It creates like a human face, it looks like an airplane type thing. But the thing that, it's all very interesting. However, when one of the things I liked, and I think one of the things that we're missing is curation, so I miss John Peel, who we would, as kids, we would tune into John Peel, the BBC radio guy, and he'd take us on a journey, and we had no idea. He just built up this trust where he could play anything and we'd listen to it. He was our guide through this stuff. But so when I did the recollection of being on John Peel's show, I did some research. I found out that he was in Dallas, Texas, when was it Lee Harvey Oswald? When Lee Harvey Oswald was shot. Yeah, when he was shot coming out of the jail, John Peel, this kind of, was actually there. You can see him on camera, and he was in Texas and kind of pretending to be a reporter just to see what the hell was going on. So you can ask, have Martin tell the story of this or have Martin tell the story of that, but nobody would ever ask, have Martin tell the story of John Peel with Lee Harvey Oswald, because it was a huge surprise to me and anybody who heard the story. I thought British people would be like, yeah, we know all about this. People were freaking out. They had no idea. So I like the idea of going on journeys with people and creating those relationships where it's like, hey, we've done this. You've been with me for the last 12 hours every week. Now we're going to go and do this thing. And trust me, it's going to be interesting. So it's kind of surprising and different. I'm also going analog, finding my own creativity in screen printing, painting, making things. We did our last MMX conference. I made it scratch and sniff. So, and if I was on top of my game, I would have an example. There was a card which you could order from us, and there were 8 circles inside the card, and one smelt of coffee, one smelt of bananas, one smelt of weed, one smelt of money, one smelt of burning rubber, because we had Mikel Ellcessor, who signed Metallica when he was 24 years old, and they had a song called Fuel, which starts with a spinning tire. So we introduced this tactile this experience where people, so you see everybody on the Zoom screen scratching, and sniffing these different smells. So I'm trying to do that, right? I'm not anti-technology at all, obviously, but I'm trying to tread this path of like, isn't this amazing? Now everybody, let's smell bananas together, and just experiment with what can happen.
It's like virtual wine tasting, right? Where
Yeah.
they will ship crates of wine to you, and then you don't open it until the Zoom session starts, and everybody drink together and tell stories while they're drinking.
That's a great idea. I hadn't heard of that. That's a thing? That's a thing?
I think someone has done that probably a few months ago. I'm not sure whether they're successful at it, but people seem to like it.
Wow.
But I would love to join a Zoom session if I could like pre-order like a crate of your amazing coffee, right? And then I get to drink in the morning together with you.
Mm-hmm.
What I would give to be able to attend such a virtual coffee tasting session together with you, hosted by you. It can't be anybody else other than you, because you created the coffee.
Well, but also, I know you've been talking about marketing and messaging. So do I need to be careful about mentioning the name of my coffee?
It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So my coffee is called Get the Fuck Out of Bed.
Great name, by the way.
Well, thank you. But it began, it was one of the slides in my presentations 11 years ago. And then I made a poster. And then I started to screen print pillowcases, because I thought that was kind of ironic. And we like a pillowcase that says, get the fuck out of bed. Right. And I built up this thing so that my initial audience was my 2 eldest sons, right, who wouldn't get out of bed. So then I could, instead of going into their room, come on, get out of bed. I didn't want to be lame dad who says that. And so I could go in their room and go, listen, guys, this isn't me, lame dad, telling you to wake up. This is actually part of one of my presentations. I just keynoted at a Ruby programming convention in Madison, Wisconsin. So it was just me trying to do that. And then I started to tweet it every day. And then I think 3 years ago, it became a coffee. I met these crazy people at Dark Matter Coffee who are way crazier than me and just awesome. They're always working on vinyl records, new ideas, guitar FX pedals, and always trying to help people, So it worked out really great. This message, and I was tweeting again this morning, this message kind of resonates with people. Yeah.
This is brilliant, and what a great story as well. I know that you do a lot of Zoom panels. Of course, you do a lot of South by Southwest keynotes, and of course, conferences around the world, not just in America, right? So I'm actually dying, to actually attend one of your upcoming, conferences. Will you be on the lineup for South by Southwest Online coming in March?
Yes, we just they told me a couple of weeks ago. I think it's my 12th South by, which if you told me that 12 years ago, yeah. It's called Art in a Time of Crisis. Just talking how we've used our abilities to force multiply other people's efforts, right? we've been having a blast doing that and helping people and building all of these stories. So I'm going to be talking about that. I don't have the exact time yet, even though it's only like 3 or 4 weeks away. I think I saw some emails earlier with Molly where I think they're just working out the time. So I will be doing that. And then as soon as I can, as soon as it's reasonable to travel, I'll start to travel and speak again. You know, I enjoyed being back in Japan for the first time in over 20 years, just a couple of years ago. I really enjoy being in South America, Medellin, Santiago, Chile. I've really enjoyed that. It's been very fueling for me. So I'll be doing more of that. Yeah.
I remember during our last podcast where you appeared, you mentioned about you were in Barcelona and you were there not just because you wanted to keynote at an event, but you wanted to play drums with Pete Shelley, right, from the Buzzcocks.
Yeah, I mean I'm at a point where I used to be a drummer, and then I was a record producer and a record label owner, and then I was a teacher, and then I wrote a book, and then I wrote 3 books. And then I was a speaker. I was nearly just a speaker, right? Now I'm creating new programs at Millikan University and doing all this stuff. But I think now the thing that I like is I'm doing everything. I'm speaking in Barcelona. I play drums with Pete Shelley. I get to do all of this stuff, be a dad, have my coffee, do all of this stuff together. It's really getting to be very interesting, you know.
And I hope that when the borders are open and when it's safe to travel, you can actually make a trip to Singapore and actually be one of our keynote speaker for our PodFest Asia in-person event. My dream is to actually have an in-person event, not a virtual event, because virtual event, to be honest, I'm getting so much fatigue already. Like doing it in front of the computer, right? And just talking this way is unnatural. What we really need is to feel your voice in a room with hundreds of people and feeling excited by the tone and to experience you throwing maybe chocolate bars or sweets to the audience. That's the kind of thing you want to actually attend your live event, because that's what makes this so interesting. That surprise element is like watching a Pig Face concert or a 9 Inch Nails or Ministry concert, the element of surprise. I think we want to feel our speakers, and I hope that one day, you know, you can come to Singapore where you'll be part of this 100 other keynote speakers who will be delivering, you know, many interesting talks about not just marketing, content creation, but all these interesting things that you're doing, right? In all this realm that we are all very interested in, because you're a creative person and of course you're our tribe, and we always have a great time whenever you come back to the show and talk to us. So before I let you go, I definitely want to ask you maybe 2 last questions.
Okay.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self? And would you still, you know, reply the same way on your last podcast when you were on, where you mentioned about you would tell your 18-year-old self to be less shy? Is that still the answer?
That's part of it. I would also tell my 18-year-old self that this is, if you want, this doesn't need to be a 15 minutes, right, of fame or whatever degree of fame I've had. It doesn't need to be 1 or 2 years. You can have a life doing these things. And I think I might have acted differently as a kid. You know, I'm still shy. I forget that I'm shy because I'm normally telling students and anybody that will listen like, hey, I'm really shy and I'm doing this. If I can do this, you can. You just have to practice at doing it and you'll get better at it. You know, I think that's quite surprising for anybody to hear, that other people are shy doing things like this. You know, it's possible to be shy and do this.
Kind of squeeze in one last question.
Yeah.
How's Danny Carey doing? And we heard that Maynard had COVID twice, right, last year, and almost couldn't make it because they ran out of ventilator machines in the hospital. Right. So do you keep in close contact with Danny Carey and the rest of the guys in Tool?
No, I say hi to them when I'm at a concert, of course. But it's Danny who came out with Pigface in 1994, and he's on. We have a group chat, so he's on the message thread. he'll throw things in there, or I'll forget that he's in the group, and he'll respond to something that I've posted. And he is an example. He has to be top of his game, top of the world in terms of drumming. And he also happens to be one of the nicest people ever, as does Randy Blythe, the singer from Lamb of God. You could not meet nicer people. And so that's been a real blessing for me, is to be friends with these people who are just awesome, so you can stand back and watch Danny play the drums, but you see his smiling face first thing in the morning, and everything's all right with the day. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm, waiting for that day when Face will be touring again. Maybe, this time around, I will not miss it for anything, because I missed that particular show where he played in one of the Pigface shows. That's the only show that he played on, right? And I was supposed to be there for that concert, but I couldn't because of work. I could only watch snippets of it online. So any of that footage, would it be like a reproduced, or would it be repurposed for like a live stream event in the future where we can watch it in full?
Yeah, I mean, there is amazing footage of Danny in '94 in Kansas City. Something happened. The opening band couldn't get on stage in time, so they just took all these oil drums into the car park, set them on fire, and we're all just playing drums. That's great footage, which I have somewhere. But there's footage of 2019 with 5-6 drummers, Andrew Weiss on bass, 3, 4, 5 bass players, probably 40 of us on stage total. There is footage of that, and we will. I'll make sure we let you know when we put that up for people to watch. And we normally do a kind of a pay what you want situation. If somebody doesn't, a Pigface fan for 30 years doesn't have any money right now, they can watch it. Somebody else who's doing well can throw $100 in the pot and everything's fine. So we're always trying to do things like that.
I love this model, and love that you're a very kind person, and you're always lifting others. I could see that you're great at bringing people together as well. So you're one of the models for me, role model for me in terms of what I do as well. I'm always inspired by you. So I hope that I can actually show my appreciation and my thanks to you, in a real in-person event. Hopefully when you come to Singapore to keynote at PodFest Asia in the future.
That would be great. It's a date.
It's a date. That's what I learned from you, and I use that all the time. Thank you so much, my friend Martin. Please take care of yourself over there. Take care of each other. I'll see you around. Yeah. Goodbye.
You. See you.
Thank
Bye.
You, bye.
Bye.
That's Martin Atkins, one of my heroes, one of my drum gods. So, my next guest is also someone that I look forward to jam with on this PodFest Asia event. So, just to reset, we are doing this because we want to put a spotlight on podcasters, especially those who are creating this podcasting space and making it so vibrant and creatively interesting, right? And the next guest is someone who is really creating something great for the law industry. I think in terms of producing shows for people around the world, there are also many indie producers, or should I say content creators or audio production companies, podcast production agencies that create their own category of podcasts. And Robert Ingalls is someone that I always want to talk to, for quite some time now. And finally, he's on the show. How are you, my friend? Robert.
I am lovely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty excited to be going on right after the drummer from Nine Inch Nails. When I was a lawyer, no one was letting me speak after the drummer from Nine Inch Nails. So podcasting's been good to me.
Seriously? Has nobody allow you to talk about Nine Inch Nails or Nine Inch Nails? What's the reason behind that?
Sorry, it cut out for a second.
Yeah. What was the reason behind you were not allowed to listen to Nine Inch Nails when you were doing law?
No. I was just saying that when I was a lawyer, I never had an opportunity to speak at an event after the drummer from Nine Inch Nails.
Okay. Now I totally get you. It's incredible, cool. Right? Yeah, this is absolutely. Super cool. I could never imagine when I was listening to Nine Inch Nails when I was 13-year-old. I think the record was Broken, the Broken EP by Nine Inch Nails. I could never imagine that a person who played drums on a record is now on this festival. So I think life has its own mysterious way, right? And also that synchronicity thing that is going on in the universe. So decades later, of course, I am so privileged to meet him and also meet you right after him. And Robert, please tell us, what are the great things you're creating in the podcasting space? Because I know that you create so many awesome shows with law pods, and you're basically lifting up in terms of like storytelling, also the way that this profession is helping to deliver messages and adding value to people around the world through your podcast. Tell us how you achieve that.
Sure. So I, kind of my quick backstory is I practiced law for almost 7 years, and the long story short is I was kind of disillusioned with that. I got married. We started talking about having children, and I just went, whoa, children used to be tomorrow guy's problem. And then they became today guy's problem. And I was like, I just realized I was profoundly unhappy and disappointed at this moment in my life. And I didn't like what I did. I really just I had a lot of anxiety around it. I mean, the law is it's especially depending on what you do. And I was in litigation, is contentious. You're essentially dealing with other people's problems for them all the time. And it was just tough for me. And I started kind of looking around for different things to do, started reading books. Then I ended up listening to my first podcast, and I'm like, well, this is a super cool medium. It just really resonated with me. And within a month, I owned $1,000 worth of gear, this microphone included. And over the next 3 years, I started, podcasting out of my law firm, not really ready to leave the law, but wanting to do something. And then within 3 years, I had started my own company producing podcasts for the legal industry. And that, a lot of people said, why are you, kind of niching down so far? And if law taught me anything, it was that, the riches are in the niches. And because lawyers, I mean, there's a lot of them, so there's a lot of competition, and it's really hard to make a name for yourself if you do this, that, and the other. If you're the guy who does personal injury, you're the girl who does family law, and you kind of take any case that walks in the door, it can be very difficult to build your name as the person who does this, and then create your name in the public, but even probably more importantly, your name inside the legal world. Because that's where you're going to end up making a lot of money, is in the referral game. People think, right, family law, criminal, they know you as this person who does this thing. And so taking that from the legal world into the podcast world, it just seemed like a natural idea to not cast a wide net and not become known as the company that will produce your podcast no matter who you are. And so we immediately from day one really just focused on lawyers. I mean, we had other clients, but we didn't advertise it. And that helped us in a way looking back. I mean, I don't want to say that I knew it was going to work out like that, but sometimes shit works out. And I ended up being right, because I was able to, in a much shorter period of time than I should have been able to, I was able to start getting clients on the international scale, like clients that have over 1,000 lawyers in their firms. These are monster clients that I would have never expected we could have got within 2 years of being in business. But because we focus specifically on the law and working with lawyers to help them craft their podcasts, we became known in the legal industry. I mean, we're still getting there. We're still relatively small in my mind, but we started getting that notoriety as the podcast people for lawyers. They do lawyers. And not only do they do lawyers, they are lawyers. So they understand the intricacies of legal marketing, because legal marketing is different than other types of marketing. You have to be careful what you say. You can say this, you can't say this. And so that got me a lot of comfort with lawyers. It got me a lot of meetings right away. When you say, hey, you're do some outreach in the beginning of sales, and just mentioning that you are also a lawyer gives you instant credibility. So I don't know if I answered your question. I got on after it for a while. So
fantastic. I think I especially love that bit when you mentioned about the riches are in the niches. And of course, you're inspiring every podcasters out there, right, who are running out of ideas on how or what kind of content they should produce. What should they be talking about? How they should niche down. I think you're just showing the rest of us, right? The way to do it is to do something that you're familiar with. And and the law practice is so close to your heart. So it's just a natural progression for you to do a podcast and to have a production company that deals with people in this realm. This is 100% you, right? Nobody else but Robert can actually pull off something like this. It's a huge feat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to definitely ask you about something related to legal, because podcasters always forget to get their guests to sign release forms. Do you do that?
We go back and forth on that. I mean, for our personal show that we do on our for Law Pods, like we have a show called Law in the Time of Coronavirus, and it's really a show where we interview lawyers and people from the legal industry on how they are changing the way they run their firms, and in light of the pandemic, and what technology they're using, how they're changing things, and what they plan on doing going forward, like how this has changed their firms forever and the way that and the practice of law forever. And for that show, we do not. And really the main reason we do not is because if somebody that we interviewed ever decides that they didn't like how that went, I'm going to take that down. I'm not going to fight with them. I don't want, even if it's great content and I don't, and I might disagree with their rationale for wanting to take it down. I never want someone to feel like, I wouldn't want to sour that relationship and say, no, we're going to keep it up because it belongs to us now. Now, that is not a comment on whether or not other people should do it. I understand for some shows, it makes a lot of sense to do it. I have a lot of good friends who run podcasts who always do it. And I get that, because, an episode is a lot of work. I mean, there can 10 hours to 15 hours of your life easily can go into one episode. And so that's, when you look at time as money, time's more valuable than money. You don't get that back. And so sometimes you're like, that's amazing content we spent a lot of time on, and we're not going to take that back because, that's just how they roll. And I'm okay with that. But at this moment where we are with the show that we have, that's not what we do. We have some clients that do it, that will have people sign releases and things like that. So I think that it's a very personal decision. It's a business decision as well. And, you can never go wrong having someone sign it, because even you can still change your mind. Like, you're not bound by that. If they come back and ask you, hey, I don't really like that part, or I don't really like the whole episode, you don't have to then say, well, we signed a contract, so now I have to keep it up. You can always pull it down. You can always agree to do that. So I don't think there's any downside to it.
That's great sharing. I think it's a great nugget of information there for podcasters, right? And you're running your law practice from a distance during coronavirus. This particular podcast is just one of many that you have done, and also you produce tons of others for other law firms as well. So we know that this the first show that you name drop is a great resource to help lawyers navigate this current storm, this pandemic, and also keep their firms running smoothly and profitably, right? So how many law firms, or should I say your listeners, have actually reached out to you and say that you saved their law firm or their business as a result of all this great information that you shared on your podcast?
That's our favorite thing, is getting emails from people that, even before I had one for the business, I used to do kind of I feel like a lot of podcasters started in the personal development area because we quit our jobs and got into podcasting, and we got into personal development. That's what we knew. So that's what we talked about. And so I used to get emails from that, and that was always really comforting, and, really makes your day. Anybody who has a podcast knows getting an email from a happy listener is really exciting. Our podcast, we haven't had it that long. So, I mean, I'd say we've gotten a handful of listener feedback messages, but we do enjoy them. It's really nice when somebody says, hey, this guest you had, they said some things I'm, struggling, because law's tough. It is a tough area to navigate for most people. I mean, there's not many other areas, many other careers where the governing agency of the career says, look, every 3 years, you're going to need to take a class on substance abuse and not killing yourself. And that's serious. Every 3 years, lawyers are mandated to take these substance abuse, kind of suicide awareness classes. And I mean, that says a lot about the profession. So there's a lot of people out there that are, struggling with anxiety, and some are in depression. And so, those people, it's nice to hear from somebody who, especially when they say hey, I've had so much anxiety around what's going on. Our business has taken a hit, and I listened to this guest, and it was it really helps some of that stuff click. So it's like that makes you feel good.
And that's the reason why podcasters love doing what we do, because we're able to not just, do this and maybe even make a decent living for certain people, but it helps to also impact on other people's lives, right? And what you're doing, with your podcast shows, these are fantastic. But of course, you have a few other interesting shows that we need to talk about as well. And I think one of your other few of your podcasts that Law Pods that produce, I think one of them is called Divorce Healthy. I think this is something that you do with the law office of Ashley Nico Russell. Is that right? Did I pronounce their name correctly?
Yes.
So tell us about this show. It seems pretty interesting, and it's a topic that many marriage couples are facing because pandemic basically amplify every possible issues or problem, including marriages. Do you see a spike in listenership during the pandemic for this show?
So, I mean, I know what I can tell you is that family law firms kind of across the board have seen some increased activity in their phone ringing and clients setting up appointments and things over the last year. I won't delve into that specific show's listenership just because, I produce for clients, and without the client being like, hey, go ahead and talk about what's going on in the back end, I wouldn't do that. But the show's doing well. And it was actually, it was launched with perfect timing, because we started launching that show in early 19. It went live, I think, in January or February of 20. So, right before, literally, weeks before the global lockdown. And the show has thrived during that because, people that were already struggling got into situations where they're crammed inside of a house with somebody who they may not be that enamored with anymore. And the show isn't all about how to fight, which I think really resonates with people. The show is about how to not fight. It's about how to get through this while maintaining, even if you're not going to be able to maintain the relationship, you can maintain your own sanity, but also be able to work through this situation. Because frequently divorcing couples will have children, and it's, you're stuck with that other person for the rest of your life. Whether you like it or not, you are inextricably connected through these children to that person. And it's how to go through that, how to divorce in a healthy fashion. It doesn't have to be toxic. It doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be contentious. And the show is all about different ways and different strategies you can employ in your life, in your mindset, going back to personal development. A lot of personal development is, the way you view the world to get you through that. And, she brings on couples who have divorced, sometimes recently, sometimes years ago, that have figured it out, who have cracked the code, who are doing a very good job. Some of them, their new significant others are good friends with each other. Like, they have figured out how to make this work for themselves, for their children, for their whole family. So it's been a really interesting show to work on, because when people think of divorce, they think about, massive legal bills and fighting tooth and nail for years, over the bird, who gets to keep the bird, who gets the dogs, who gets the timeshare, whatever. Like, it's just, people think of it being ugly. And this show really shows another side of it, what's possible.
I think this show is really intriguing. And of course, it's obviously a format which is going to be successful, because it's in a podcast format where anyone who are able to, just on demand, right, dial into the show or just download or stream this show, are able to get answers straight away, especially if they're looking for specific topics, which I think your show cover. And do you think that, with the success of Clubhouse, especially in 2021, right, it's taking off in so many different ways, and also like leveling up the game for podcasters as well, and how people do storytelling or even do their pitching, should I say, or adding value or bringing value to the table. Do you think that a show like Divorce Healthy can work in a format in social audio where the audience who are listening in while this show is being produced are able to raise their hand and go on stage and ask a question, or even basically just share some of their moments where they're facing anxiety, anguish because they are facing a marriage issue, and are able to have these vulnerabilities, being told in this platform because the camera is off, and obviously, people are more intimate and more confident of sharing, the vulnerabilities or the issues that they have in their marriage. in a format like that, do you think that this show could be extended to a Clubhouse format as well?
I mean, I do. I think it could. I think a lot of shows can. I think there's a lot of white space out there right now that we're not even seeing for audio. And Clubhouse is one of them. I love what they're doing. And there's so many different angles that can work because the internet really has disconnected us in a lot of ways. For all the ways it's connected us and allowed me and you to sit here on different sides of the world and have a chat is amazing. But at the same time, you have Twitter and Facebook and you have these comment sections and people are running to their corners and arguing with each other. And it's so easy to do that, even between friends. An issue will come up and you'll be on their Facebook comments and they will, you can't hear tone, you can't read into it. And so they'll take something that you said, maybe not quite the right way. And now you're kind of in an argument, whereas if they could hear your voice, it's a lot harder to other somebody. It's a lot harder to be like, that person is different and I'm judging them and I'm creating this whole idea around who they are. They're a liberal, they're a conservative. When you can hear somebody's voice and you can hear that moment of hesitation, you can hear that crack in their voice when they say something that is intimate for them. And that connects us in a way that we have lost through the written word when we're connecting on Twitter and in different forms of social media. And you hear that person as a person, all of the things that have happened to them, all of the good things, the bad things. And it, we're so multifaceted as people. And I think, listening to someone's voice allows you into that person's life in a way that other forms haven't. And, back to your point, it's audio, it's not video. As any podcaster, who, especially producers, have seen immediately when they started working, that when you turn the camera off, people get a lot more relaxed. They just, you turn that, you go watch lawyer videos. I'm not saying, there's plenty that do it well. There's more that don't. Go to their websites, watch their videos, and they're sitting like this, and they're talking really stilted, and they have a bunch of books behind them. And it just, it frequently feels a little bit weird. And it's like that. I don't know that video is ever going to make me want to hire that lawyer. They might be a great lawyer and I might hire them, but probably won't because of that video. And then those same lawyers, you can turn that camera off, let them sit back in their chair, just get the conversation going because they know what they're talking about. They know their area. And you just start asking them questions about the things that clients ask them questions about every day from every client. They're hearing basically the same 50, 100, questions, and ask them those questions and they're off and running and they're just talking to you. They're sitting in the room. They're not really thinking about it. And they know it's going to be edited. They don't care what their hair is doing. They don't care if they touch their nose. And it's much more intimate and personal and just a better overall product at the end. In my opinion, most people are able to do that. And so I think, it's a long way of saying, I think audio is amazing in the way it connects us. I think there's a lot of, like I said, white space that we can do with it. I think Clubhouse is a really cool way to start that process, the way people can come together and talk about the things that are happening in their life and just kind of dish with each other in a fashion where they're not worried that someone's going to see them and take a screenshot and send it to their boss. And hey, this person said this when, because there's so many issues in the world that we have different opinions on, and that's okay. We need, A, it's okay to have a different opinion, but B, you need to be able to voice that opinion and hear what other people think about it in order to start growing and changing. And having a place to be able to do that, to have people that might have some really, what we would see as mainstream upsetting opinions on the world. If those people aren't given an opportunity, if they actually want to, if they come with, some earnestness and want to voice that opinion, say, hey, here's what I think. And then someone else can say, well, here's why we don't think that. Here's our lived experience. Here's how we see the world. And here's why we think that might not be the best angle or whatever. Like, these are the things that I feel like, we're starting to lose as a society. And that concerns me. So I think that, the ability to come together and have those conversations is important. And, for like going to the divorce angle of it, when people are struggling, when people are hurt, they want someone to listen to them. They want to be able to ask a question and say, here's my experience, and not even necessarily get an answer to say, oh, here's how to make it better. Sometimes it gets better by sharing it, by just saying, and then somebody says, I know how you feel. I've been there. That is powerful. So I'll keep going for a while if you let me. So
It's wonderful what you just shared. I think we are quite aligned in terms of thinking that many of our shows can actually work really well in social audio format as well. And you have so many other shows, right, that are focusing on the lawyers, on legal marketing, on law topics. So how about the other shows like the 26 and Across the Table and Dealers In, promoting the advancement of women in private equity and finance? How about shows like this? Do you think they will also work well in Clubhouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think almost anything can. The 26 is an interesting show. That's our local bar association, or that's our local bar in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. And it's been really fun working with them to produce something that is helpful for lawyers, that lawyers can come to use as a resource. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a type of show that could transition well because, I mean, it's very low, it's hyper local because it's just Mecklenburg County. But at the same time, it's a way for people to have a really low stakes ability to just gather and discuss a topic. Now, one thing that might be nicer is, sometimes you're in a room with people that you don't know, and that can be comfortable. For a hyper local show, there's a good chance that you might hear someone's voice and be like, I know exactly who that is. I hear them in court all the time. But I mean, even at the same time, I still think there's good things that can come of it. The other two shows that you talked about, Deal Us In, we're especially proud of that show. That's a show between two companies. One's McGuire Woods and the other one's called 7 Mile Advisors. And they came together to do this Women in Private Equity initiative. And for anybody who is interested in that area, I really recommend you listen to it. It's a lovely show. We're having we're having fun with it, and the hosts are having fun with it, but it's also very timely. And that's definitely a show that I think would work, would translate to other mediums well, where people could come together and discuss those same issues. And I'll tell you, one of the things I'm really, really happy and proud of that show about is we were having trouble with the artwork. They had a big vision on it, and we just couldn't bring it to fruition with our art team. And I just rolled up my sleeves one night and I spent like 6 hours on it, just like inside working on it, and just built it myself. So that cover art is mine, and I'm really proud of it. I'm certainly not, I have no background in design, any of that stuff, but you can teach yourself anything if you have the will for it. So I got in there and did that one.
That's amazing. You're more talented than I expected. No, I'm just joking. I mean, you're super talented in so many forms, so many ways, including graphic design. I know so many podcasters who outsource their album artwork, cover design to people on Fiverr or other platforms. So you actually handle this task on your own. That's incredible.
Well, generally not. I mean, I try not to. It's not the best use of my time usually, but we just ran into a wall there, and I was like, I'm going to get this done. But honestly, you bring it, calling me talented is interesting, because I'll tell you, I was 35 years old and I still thought that I'm not a creative person. Like, that was my internal dialogue, was I'm not a creative person. I had always
that you produce, you still don't think you're a creative person?
Oh, I do now. But at that time, this is, 5.5 years ago, I just that's not how I viewed myself at the time. That's why I went to college, and that's why I went to law school, because I did things that other people did. The idea of just starting a company, doing a thing that most people in the country, when I started producing podcasts, I don't even know if we had, we might have been around 60% of people in the United States had even heard of a podcast. If you said the word out loud, they would know what it meant. And, the idea of a younger version of me being I'm going to quit my job, quit my career, and go do that thing, that would have been absurd to me. But I was over the course of years, I was really able to take control of that inner narrative that I had created over the course of years. And it turns out I'm hyper creative. I'm not necessarily going to bust out a canvas and start painting on it, at least not today. But I found so many different ways that I could be creative with my voice, with my editing skills, with my ability to learn Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects and things like that. So, it's never too late to discover your creativity.
And you unlock all that in a short space of a few years. So that's an incredible story. So before we let you go, you can tell us the story of how to exactly, create a compelling and converting law podcast in less than an hour per week. How is that possible?
I love it. You're selling it for us. So, lawyers struggle with creating content. They want to practice law. They don't want to spend their time writing and dealing with blog posts and all manner of other things. It's hard enough for them to find time to network. And so, I talk to a lot of legal marketing directors, managers, things like that inside the firms. Those are generally my points of contact. And their pain points that they have is I can never get my lawyers to do any writing. It's so hard to get them to write a blog post or write a newsletter, something like that. And when we were, building the company, we had to think about what are the pain points? Why should they buy our thing? What trouble are they experiencing that we can help solve for them? And that was one of the immediate things, especially having worked in a law firm, was content. The lawyers don't want to produce it, but they know they need it. And that is something that it was almost like what we do was built specifically to answer that problem, because all they have to do is sit down and talk about what they know. Answer the questions that all of your clients have over and over and over again, because when they show up on your website, that's what they're thinking about. They want to know, should I take half the money in the bank account? What should I do before I leave? What happens to the kids on vacation? This is like if it's a family law attorney. And what you need to do is answer those questions for them. And when you sit down in front of a microphone and just talk, maybe with someone else in the firm, you can spend 30 minutes on that microphone and come up with 5,000 words of content, as opposed to sitting down for several hours trying to get 800 words onto a page. And lawyers, they tend to be good writers, but they're also, even some of the best writers, we edit again, and then we re-edit. And then once it's published, we're like, damn, I wish I could edit it one more time. And what you can do, like when you sit down and you're able to just talk for 30 minutes, now you've got 5,000 words of content. So not only is it a podcast episode, it can also then become micro content. It can become audiograms. It can become quote images. You can convert some of it into a blog post. You can write your SEO show notes. You can transcribe that entire thing. So you can turn one 30-minute episode into dozens of pieces of content. So they can sit down once a week and talk for 30 minutes to an hour, and now they're done. They've got these dozens of content from that one time, instead of, sitting down and trying over and over and over again to try to get them to, sit down and write a long form post.
Great sharing, great insights. And I wish we had more time so we can ask you for more tips and strategies. But I think it would be great that you can have you back on our festival in our future editions. So in March, we have a Clubhouse event. It's a post-festival in conversation series. Hopefully you can come back and join us in Clubhouse this time. I think that's another way for us to see more action, right? And to let you continue to also share stories with our PodFest Asia community on the great work you're doing in this field. So thank you so much, Robert. And before you go, any last message for our audience in Asia?
I'll tell you, not to be like what he said, but the guy right before me, it really hit the nail on the head for me. Is he said, I'm shy. But no one would ever think that someone like me could be out here doing something like this. And that resonates with me so strongly, because as a young boy, I was so shy, and I didn't, I told you, I was like, I never felt like I was creative. And then, now look, like I'll talk to anybody about anything for any length of time. Put a camera on me and I want to talk about it. And that was a muscle that I had to grow. It was something I wanted to do, but I had to learn how to do it. In fourth grade, I failed a book report because I had to give the oral report. I'd read the book, but I was too scared to give the report. And then I became a trial lawyer. And then I became a podcaster and a speaker. So, just because you might find yourself in a position, if you want to do something like this, if you want to get your voice out in the world, just start talking. It's not going to be easy. It might be a little uncomfortable, and it might be like that for a while, but if you want to do it, do it. That muscle will develop and you will enjoy it. So thanks so much for having me.
That is so inspiring. I think anyone who's watching this now are going to replay this on their AirPods or smart speakers, they will feel inspired to start a podcast if they haven't. So thank you once again, my friend. Thank you, Robert. You've been a great guest, and I hope to talk to you in Clubhouse really soon, yeah?
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Take care of yourself over there.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers. And with that, I think Robert has just dropped so many value bombs, same as our previous 5 other guests. So we have done 6 already. And we are just, I think we just started because we have another 2 more midnight sessions, I think, and 2 day sessions. We have breakfast sessions, afternoon sessions, each one featuring like 4 to 6 guests. I think we're climaxing to our biggest guest who is going to be appearing on the festival. Tony Fernandez, Group CEO for Air Asia, will be on PodFest Asia as well. So many more, interesting conversations to look forward to. So I urge you, if you haven't marked your calendar, just follow the link below. Or just if you're watching this on LinkedIn, just simply click on that link and then make sure that you add this to your calendar. So the moment when you go live, you're able to see this live stream. And of course, these are also replayed on podcasts. And we will be chopping and slicing all this content for repurposing and also for rebroadcast in the future on our social pages. So watch out for that. So in the meantime, I'll just take a short nap for 3 hours. I'll be back in 3 hours' time. Now it's about 3:10 a.m. in Singapore. I'll be back at 6 a.m. just in time for sunrise in Singapore. So I'll see you guys shortly. And see ya. Goodbye.